Oh,
Oh, yeah, I see you popped up in the corner there. Perfect, perfect. All right, so let me bring this up and move the overlay for you. Make that big for you. And then, yeah, whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
okay. And so this is the Bible promotes slavery, and I am taking the affirmative position by me, First Amender. The claim promotes slavery. The term promotes slavery is vague, and I seek to get a strong definition of what it means to promote. Slavery is to own a person as property, often resulting in forcing them to work under control of threat of violence and denying them basic personal freedom and rights. Promote is to contribute to the growth or prosperity of, based on Merriam Webster. For me to prove my claim, I would have to show that the Bible explicitly condones or contributes to the growth and prosperity of slavery, of which I can show in spades, and I will show to you now. Leviticus 25:44 to 46. Your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves. You may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you and members of their clan born in your country, and they will become your property. You can bequeath them to your children as inherited property and can make them slaves for life. But you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly. The context being that this is the section where God is speaking to the laws of the Israelites to Moses. These words are from God, where it states, "The Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, saying, dot, dot, dot," with repeated verses of God's saying, "Tell the Israelites this, dot, dot, dot." They are divine instructions given through Moses to Israel. Exodus 21:20 to 21, stating, "Anyone who beats their male or female slave with a rod must be punished if the slave dies as a direct result, but they are not to be punished if the slave recovers after a day or two, since the slave is their property." The context is, again, a section where God is literally speaking with Moses on Mount Sinai, saying, "The Lord said to Moses, thus shall say to the Israelites." And again in Exodus 21:1, stating that these are the ordinances that you shall set before them, speaking clearly of further commandments to be given to the Israelites to follow. Deuteronomy 20:10 to 14, stating, "When you march up to attack a city, make its people offer of peace. If they accept and open their gates, all of the people in it shall be subject to forced labor, and they shall work for you. If they refuse to make peace and they engage you in battle, lay siege to that city. When the Lord your God delivers it to your hand, put the sword all the men in it. As for the women, the children, the livestock, and everything else in the city, you may take these as plunder for yourselves, and you may use the plunder the Lord your God gives you from your enemies." The context being that this section is referring to a large collection of laws presented as Moses' instructions from God to the Israelites before entering Canaan. But these are all Old Testament. The New Testament argues to free slaves, not enslave them. Okay. Ephesians 6:5, New International Version, stating, "Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey in Christ." The context being Paul is addressing the conduct expected of members of a quote unquote Christian household concerning relationships. Colossians 3:22, stating, "Slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything, and do it not with their eye is on you and to curry their favor, but with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord." Context: Paul and Colossians with the very similar statements repeated regarding household rules. First of Peter 2:18, stating, "Slaves, in reverent fear of God, submit yourselves to your masters, not only to those who are good and considerate, but also those who are harsh." Context being instructions on how Christians should conduct themselves within existing social relationships, and specifically addresses household slaves and servants. Additionally, people historically have argued in favor of slavery using the passages I've shown. And I use this book right here, "The South Vindicated from the Treason and Fanaticism of the Northern Abolitionists," which was written by William Drayton, a South Carolina planter and slaveholder, and was a prominent defender of slavery. His work explicitly argued from Christianity and scripture. You can actually go to archive.org to pull this and see page 85, where the entire chapter is literally arguing slavery on the basis of the New and Old Testament by a slaver themselves. Despite this, people still say that the Bible does not promote slavery. People often argue that the Bible was used to abolish slavery. Even if I grant this premise, the Bible was used to justify all sorts of things, it does not revoke the over 1,000 years of history that did emphasize ruling condoning slavery. People will also bring up that Moses has freed the slaves and therefore the book that emphasizes against slavery, yet this once again does not address that the Bible has also endorsed slavery under different contexts of which already has been provided. In conclusion, the Bible promotes slavery. You can follow me on YouTube where I have open progressive debates, a call-in show, the First Amender Show, youtube.com/@First Amender. Thank you very much.
Me?
Muted, sorry. Yes, I'm gonna move the mic over to you. Thank you for that opening statement for Amender. And yes, Andrew, whenever you are ready, let me get your clock started over for you. I will start the clock up with your voice.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Obviously, thank you, Speakeasy. Thank you to my opponent. We're here to debate a crucial question. Does the Bible promote slavery? To answer this honestly, we must first establish what the word promote actually means. To promote something is to actively endorse it, encourage it, advocate for its proliferation, or to hold it up as an ideal or virtue. There's a vast categorical difference between promotion and regulation. When a modern government passes regulations on dangerous driving, hazardous waste, or high-risk financial markets, no sane observer accuses that government of promoting hazardous waste or traffic accidents. Regulation is what a lawgiver does when entering an existing broken reality in order to restrict it, mitigate its harms, and set boundary lines around human cruelty. Slavery was not invented by the Bible. It was a universal reality of the ancient world, long before Moses or Abraham. The Bible did not institute slavery. It stepped into an ancient, primitive world where slavery was the unquestioned norm, and it instituted laws that radically constrained, humanized, and ultimately undermined the practice. When we examine the Old Testament, as my opponent brought up, we see a deeply pragmatic approach to an ancient economy. In the ancient Near East, there was no bankruptcy courts, no government safety nets, no unemployment benefits. If a family suffered crop failure or financial ruin, their options were starvation or bondage. Sorry, I was looking at the chat. Old Testament servitude was primarily a form of voluntary, temporary economic debt relief, more akin to modern bankruptcy or indentured servitude. Crucially, it was never based on race. It was never generational. Debts could not be permanently passed down to descendants, and it was strictly time limited, requiring the release of Hebrew servants every seventh year on the sabbatical year, and the restoration of property and freedom every 50 years during the year of Jubilee. Furthermore, the Bible explicitly bans the very foundation of historical chattel slavery, kidnapping and forced human trafficking. If we look at Exodus 21:16, which states unequivocally, whoever steals a man and sells him, and anyone found in possession of him shall surely be put to death. Let that sink in. Under biblical law, kidnapping a human being to force them into slavery was a capital offense punishable by death. The entire system of the transatlantic slave trade, which was relied entirely on man stealing, racial supremacy, and lifelong generational bondage, was explicitly forbidden and condemned by the Old Testament law. When we get to the New Testament, we see the internal logic of the gospel completely dismantle the spiritual and moral framework of slavery. In Luke 4:18, Jesus steps into the synagogue in Nazareth, opens the scroll of Isaiah, and announces his core mission. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives, recovering the sight to the blind, and at liberty to those who are oppressed. Jesus did not come, he says it twice, Jesus did not come to build earthly empires through military revolution. He came to transform human hearts, declaring a kingdom where every human being carries the sacred image of God. Every human being. So this radical ethic is demonstrated in the Apostle Paul's letter to Philemon regarding a runaway slave, I know I'm going to butcher this, named Onesimus. Paul writes to Philemon in Philemon 1:15 and 16, commanding him to receive Onesimus back, no longer as a slave. This is a quote, no longer as a slave, but better than a slave, as a beloved brother, especially to me, but how much more to you, both in the flesh of the Lord. Under Roman law, a master had the legal right to execute a runaway slave. But Paul tells Philemon that under the new covenant, slavery is obsolete because fellow believers are equal brothers and sisters in Christ. Paul tells Philemon that if Onesimus owes anything, to charge it to Paul's personal account. By commanding a master to treat his former slave as an equal, beloved brother, the new covenant laid the moral dynamite that eventually blew up the institution of slavery. So, and even in history, in the Bible, if the Bible truly promoted slavery, we would expect history to show the most devout readers of the Bible the fiercest defenders of slavery. But history reveals the exact opposite. The modern abolitionist movement was explicitly birthed, fueled, and led by Christians who cited the Bible as their primary motivation. Consider William Wilberforce, the British statesman who was the first person in history to successfully lead a political movement to abolish the slave trade in the Western world. Wilberforce was an evangelical Christian who explicitly stated that his faith in Christ and his reading of scripture were the sole reasons he spent 40 years fighting to end the slave trade. Consider Frederick Douglass, the legendary American abolitionist and advisor to Abraham Lincoln and former slave himself. Douglass drew a sharp, unequivocal line between the hypocrisy of slaveholders and the true message of scripture. Douglass recognized that slaveholders were perverting the Bible, and this addresses what First Amender said in his opening, that they were perverting the Bible, while the true Christianity of Christ was inherently anti-slavery. Let's look at other historic leaders who abolished slavery in America. John Quincy Adams, who fought the gag rule in Congress to defend the captives of the Amistad, called slavery a sin before the sight of God. That's a quote, and rooted his fight in biblical justice. Thaddeus Stevens, the radical Republican leader who drove the passage of the 13th Amendment, abolishing slavery in America, stated, I can never acknowledge, this is another quote, I can never acknowledge the right of slavery. It is incompatible with the equality of man before his creator. So in conclusion, to summarize, promote means to endorse or idealize. The Bible never presents slavery as an ideal, a virtue, or a creation order. It regulates an ancient practice to protect human dignity. The Old Testament condemned chattel slavery by placing the death penalty on man stealing. This is Exodus 21:16, and restricting debt servitude. The New Testament dissolved the moral basis of slavery by declaring all humans equal in Christ and commanding masters to treat slaves as free brothers. That's Philemon. The historic champions who brought down slavery, from Wilberforce to Lincoln's allies, did so precisely because they believed slavery was a grotesque violation of the gospel. And most importantly, there is not a single verse in Holy Scripture that promotes or commands slavery. So I'm looking forward to seeing where that actually comes in. This debate has been going on for a long time. A lot of people have done it. You know, I'll get into who I'm citing in a little bit also, but I'm looking forward to hearing what I'm looking forward to this discussion.
All right. Thank you for that opening statement. And with that, we are going to get into the rebuttal round. So that's 5 minutes each uninterrupted to directly respond to their opponent's opening arguments. So it's not a back and forth yet, no interjections. Sometimes some people will use these 5 minutes to do a little bit of cross-exam. That's more than welcome too. Or if you want to skip it, that's more than welcome too. So we're going to hand the mic back to First Amender. Whenever you're ready for your 5-minute rebuttal, let me get your timer up here, and I'll start it up with your voice.
So Andrew had stated that slavery was not invented by the Bible. This is not the claim. The claim is that whether the Bible promotes slavery. considering that the Bible stated that you could go to foreigners and take them as slaves. You literally would be promoting slavery. He also states incorrectly that the Bible bans specifically chattel slavery. No, it does not. Chattel slavery specifically is a system where people are traded as personal property or chattel. Owners can buy, sell, trade, and inherit human beings. Chattel simply means any movable personal property a person owns, and which is included in the Bible, specifically stating people as property. I could even acknowledge biblical I can acknowledge biblical slavery where it's like a loan of that an Israelite owes, but despite that fact, chattel slavery still exists. Every human being takes the image of God. I can see the arguments of abolitionists did indeed use the Bible to justify the abolition of slavery, but just as the Bible contains many contradictory viewpoints on slavery is no different. The verses I stated specifically do condone slavery, and even if you could read in removing of slavery by using the Bible does not revoke that it does in fact promote slavery in other verses. You stated that Jesus was inherently anti-slavery. There's actually, in fact, no verse that argues where Jesus explicitly to abandon the practice of slavery. In fact, Jesus is conveniently absent stating the abolitionment of slavery. And after his death and the creation of Christianity seemed to exist roughly 1,000 years after his death, and only till the 1860s did your view become in vogue. Even if I do grant your premise, it does not revoke the fact that the Bible does indeed promote slavery. And with that, I cede the rest of my time.
Okay. I wasn't. Is it my 5?
Yep. Just gonna say thank you for that rebuttal, and then whenever you're ready for your rebuttal, you can go right into it, and I'll start the time up with your voice.
Yeah, sure. I mean, in the ancient Near East, the word that he's translating as property, which is I don't know how to say it in its original language, akazua, referred to landholding or legal tenure of service, not reducing the human image, the human to like an object. It's not the way we think of it today. And Israel was surrounded by hostile pagan nations where chattel slavery, child sacrifice, and extreme brutal violence were the standard. Right. So that's why I was saying that the Bible didn't invent it. This was the standard around them. So allowing foreign captives to enter Israel's covenant community actually offered them legal protection. This is what First Amender doesn't understand. They got Sabbath rest. They got asylum from their home nations that didn't exist anywhere else in the ancient Near East. So what he said, actually, there's a big difference between regulation and promotion. So First Amendment is going to have to show where the actual promotion of slavery is, not just the regulation of it. I'm ready to get into the cross exam if you guys are.
All right. Thank you for that rebuttal. And with that, we're going to move into the open floor. Before we get into the open floor, let me just talk to the audience real quick. If you're watching right now, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and subscribe to tonight's debaters, okay? Their links are in the description, and we host all kinds of debates here on Swords of Reason, politics, culture, ethics, internet topics, anything where reasoning and passion can collide. So if you enjoy the format, make sure you stay locked in because we have a lot more coming. And also a reminder for the live chat, after the closing statements, we're going to be doing a 30-minute Q&A. The Q&A is there in the chat for you guys, but remember the super chats, the PayPals, and the Cash App questions, they will get priority. So if they fill up the whole 30 minutes, we may not get to those ones. So if you have something you really want answered, send it through one of those priority options, and we'll make sure it gets asked. And finally, thank you to both our debaters for being here tonight and bringing your perspectives into the arena. Whenever one of you is ready to start up the open floor, go ahead and start. My job here, mostly, I'm going to be out of the way unless things get too crazy, audience can't hear you, we're refusing back and forth. So if we have to go into time responses, we will, but we'll hope to stay away from that. But other than that, go ahead. The floor is all yours, boys.
Do you want to go first, or
what would it take to convince you that the Bible promotes slavery? Like what does the evidence look like?
it looks like an actual normative claim that this is what you ought to do, which is, and then you also have to recognize that there's a new covenant. So like Christians don't follow Shabbat, right? We don't have to do that. Why? Because we don't follow the rules of the old covenant. So you're going to have to show me actually in the New Testament, and you have to refute Paul's letter to Philemon, where he tells them that we're all brothers in Christ and to free their slaves and that he'd pay for it. So unless you can refute this, I mean, I don't really see how you could say there's a promotion there. Maybe regulation, I'll grant you, but again, that's not the prompt.
So I guess like the question is that the debate prompt is that the Bible promotes slavery. So if I can find anywhere in the Bible that makes a normative claim of what you ought do and have to recognize and also recognize that the new covenant endorses that, then you would concede.
If you could show me a normative claim that you ought start a slave trade and that you ought and that there's continuity to that in the New Testament, but there isn't, but you could try.
Okay. Let's see here.
I'll wait.
I have it right here. Share my screen. My apologies. Can you see my screen?
No, sir.
Okay, so it says specifically here that your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you, from them that you may buy slaves. So yes, that would be a normative claim stating that you can effectively go to foreign nations and buy them as slaves. You may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you, another normative claim, and members of their clans born in your country, and they will become your property. You can bequeath them to your children as inherited property and make them slaves for life, but you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly. So maybe we could say that it does promote slavery, but that it does so in a friendly way.
Actually, this is much nicer than what you would have found anywhere else in the region, because most of the time what they did with captives is they killed them. So to say that they're going to take them on and give them all these things, if you look up the rules for the women, they couldn't be sold. They had to be treated fairly. These people didn't have to work on the Sabbath. They were granted all types of rights strictly because of the Bible. The rest of the world didn't do any of that. They were brutal to captives. So again, you're talking about regulations, not promotion. You're actually committing what's called the Hume's is-or fallacy. You're pointing to ancient civil codes that describe and regulate existing social practices. They already existed, and leaping to the conclusion that the text prescribes or promotes it as a moral imperative, moving from an is, a descriptive regulation, to an ought, normative endorsement, without explicit text. That's a fundamental flaw in your logic.
Okay, so you went from that there's a fundamental flaw in the logic to that this is much nicer because normally they killed him. By stating that this is much nicer because they normally killed him, that means that they did, in fact, in the Bible, promote slavery.
Well, they're telling you what
because you're saying it's much nicer. It doesn't matter if it's nicer or meaner.
So what do you do with captives in the ancient world? They're not promoting slavery. Nowhere in the Bible does it say you ought do this thing. What it's saying is that in this situation, this is how you should respond to it. That's not the same thing. Again, that's a descriptive claim putting regulations. Here, I'll give you an example. Let me, if I get wrongfully imprisoned and I say, and I give you a description for what to do in that situation. If I say, don't fight your guards, right? Am I promoting wrongful imprisonment, or am I just describing what to do in that really bad situation?
Was that a question directed at me? Because you didn't address mine.
Hypothetical, yeah.
You didn't address mine at all.
What is your question?
Yeah. So because you said earlier, I wanted to unpack it. You said this is much nicer because they would normally have killed them. If it was much nicer, what is this?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm context about the regulations that they're giving on this, on taking them captive. That's what I'm talking about.
would it be fair to say when you say this is much nicer because normally they killed them, when you refer to this, you're referring to slavery. Slavery is much nicer because
I didn't
normally
say
they killed
slavery
them.
doesn't exist in the Bible. I said, so if it comes down to being a slave, an ancient slave, which again is nothing like the slavery that you consider today, nothing like it. It wasn't race based. You say it was passed down generationally. It wasn't. Also another false claim. And these slaves were freed. It was only for a certain amount
If
of
you're an
time.
Israelite.
Yeah, Israelite.
But if you're not an Israelite, they can own you indefinitely. And it was race based because I literally read to you the section where you can buy foreigners slaves and you can keep them for as long as you like. Now, again, I'm still stuck because I know for a fact that the Bible promotes slavery. I asked you, what would it take you to convince you that the Bible promotes slavery? You said you needed a normative claim of what ought do and what you have to recognize as well in the new covenant. The new covenant does show this as well, and so you
Where?
even
Where exactly?
made a grave error in your logic because you stated that this is much nicer because
Yes.
normally they killed them.
Yeah. So if you look at
When you're
every
saying
other
this is
ancient
much
law code,
nicer, as in slavery
right, we're
is
moving
better than
death.
killing, meaning you are saying the Bible promotes slavery because it's
No,
nicer than killing them.
no, you're not understanding. If you only have two bad choices in a situation and you take the morally better one, it doesn't mean you're promoting that thing. It means you only have bad options. So in that same context, it also says you shall not hand over to his master a slave who has escaped his master to you. That's Deuteronomy 23:15. Why does it say that? If you don't have to return them, right? Then is it promoting slavery?
Yeah, it's stating for your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves. This is a direct normative claim of God himself
He's not
talking
saying
to
you bought
Moses,
by slave. He's giving you regulations for the market that exists at that time. That's what he's doing. He's not saying that this is what you
which
ought to
means
do or this
that
is
they
a
are
morally good thing.
promoting slavery.
No, that's not promoting. That's
What
regulating.
is it? What
Clearly,
is
you
it
don't know the. Do
promoting?
you know what the definition of regulating is? We could pull it up. Let's
I
look at this.
understand what regulating is, but regulating would be let's make a
An
rule.
official rule, law, or directive that controls or manages how something is done. Does that sound like what you're describing?
No,
Or
because
is what you're
what it's
describing,
stating
go
is
do
that
this
you can
thing.
go.
It's I'm prescribing you this thing. It's a good thing. Which one is it?
It's stating that you can buy slaves from foreigners.
An official rule, law, or directive that controls, directs, or manages how something is done. Regulation, right?
Maybe I got to take a step back. Let's try it this way. So, if I have a series of nations, let's say that the United Nations states that you can go to foreign nations and take people captive as property, in your mind, would that increase or decrease the amount of slaves on planet Earth?
Okay. First, you're taking today's cultural context and you're applying it to thousands of years ago. These were warring factions. This was the reality of the time.
I'm not.
So they're giving directives on how to act accordingly at that time. And then as you move, you have to follow the continuity of the timeline in the Bible. So it's just taking an ancient practice that already existed and regulating it. You're going to have to show me how that's not a regulation.
Okay.
How is that not a regulation?
Well, because the definition of promotion. So if I pull up the definition of promotion, where was it give me a moment. I should have this written down. I wrote it in my PowerPoint slide. If the definition of promote is to contribute the growth or prosperity of, you agree to that definition? Yes.
I gave a definition in my opening. I'll tell you what it is exactly.
Yeah. Do you agree to the?
I'm going to give you my definition. I'm not going to just agree to yours. That clearly fits that. That is clearly a regulation on slavery. I'm going to give you my definition.
That was just a definition. That wasn't.
I'm going to give you mine. I'm not.
All right, go ahead with your definition.
Yeah. To promote means to endorse, encourage, or advocate for its proliferation.
Courage and advocate
So
for
that in
its
no way is what's
proliferation.
happening. That
I
is
think
clearly
I
a
think there's an
regulation.
error in your definition, because you're saying to it, it's a bit of a technicality. You said to endorse, encourage. Did you say and or an or between
It's
encourage and advocate?
endorse, encourage, advocate for its
Okay,
sorry.
so do all three of those metrics need to be met, or does only one need to be met?
I think only one needs to be met based on that
Okay,
definition.
so then the answer is not an and, it's an or. So to endorse,
Well, there
encourage,
wasn't
or
one there.
advocate for its proliferation. Fair
I get-
enough. So
But
if I
that's not the
use
point.
your definition, so I'm going to ask you once again, right? Because I know that we're not talking about today's atmosphere. That's fine. The problem that I'm asking is that all I have to prove to you is that the definition in the Bible proliferates slavery. If what is being said proliferates slavery. So, as an example, we don't really have a lot of slavery in the United States, maybe save for a few areas on planet Earth, maybe if you consider the prison system in the United States. So, if the United Nations told all the countries around us, saying from foreigners, you may now legally buy slaves, would that increase the amount of slaves, decrease the amount of slaves, or would it remain stagnant?
Okay. Do you? I'm going to answer. It might increase. It depends on how many people died in the
might
war. There's no way
increase?
of knowing that. There's no way of knowing that. There's
It
like you're
might
asking me
increase?
to agree to some arbitrary thing that you don't know. This is post-war. This is post-war. So we
I'm
don't
just
know
using
exactly. Maybe
use a
the whole
little ad
fucking
hoc
village got
reasoning
burned.
here,
I'm
right?
not
We don't
taking
need to
some
we don't need like
hypothetical. Do
statistics.
you
We could just
agree?
use our brains and then
Yeah, can we
confirm.
just use our brains? But you want me to grant something to you that we have no way of verifying. We have no way of knowing that for a fact. So no, I'm not going to grant it. Do you agree that there's a moral and logical distinction between a law that promotes an ideal versus a law that regulates a pre-existing broken practice? Do you agree to
Well,
that?
I think it promotes, but I'm
No,
presenting to
I'm
you
saying,
my
do you
argument.
agree that there's a moral and logical distinction between a law that promotes an ideal versus a law that regulates a pre-existing
Yes, and
broken?
I'm trying to show you that it does indeed promote it if you would engage with it. You can't seem to engage with
Well, let me
the answer
finish.
to the
If you let me
question.
finish this line of
Let's
logic, I'll show you
operate
why it
off of an
doesn't work.
intuitive nature. Let's use our intuition and say, if the United Nations told other nations, hey, you can from other nations, you may purchase slaves, would that increase slavery, decrease slavery, or would it
That's
remain
not. It's a
stagnant?
false
If I had to
analogy.
guess, right? If I had to, let's put our, I think like a majority of Western countries would say, what happened? Did he go away?
Oh, let me fix that.
Oh, it's just his camera, I
What?
think.
Yeah, I'm gonna fix
Okay. So if the United Nations told all of the countries on planet Earth, hey, you may now go to foreigners and you can buy slaves, I would venture to say there would be an X amount of Islamic nations that would likely go, okay, we can own slaves. They end up having slaves. I would venture to say maybe a majority of the West would not. Maybe North Korea, if they, heard it somewhere, may consider collecting slaves. So that would probably increase slavery in the world, right?
Well, your analogy doesn't work. It's a presentism fallacy. Again, you're looking at today and you're applying.
It has nothing. No, it doesn't matter. Let's say if
It
it was
matters.
1,000
You
years
brought
ago,
up the
2,000 years
analogy.
ago.
It
Let
matters.
let him finish his answer. Go
Oh,
ahead.
but it doesn't
Well,
matter.
no,
what
let
time.
Presentism
let
fallacy,
Andrew finish
moderator.
his answer.
Yeah, that's what that is. You're comparing something today to something that happened thousands of years ago. So no, I don't agree with your analogy at all. What that verse actually says is that if there's a war between your neighboring factions, you could take them as captive after, and it gives regulations on how to do that. That was the standard practice of the day. That's what you're not understanding. Like, it's not promoting what was already the standard practice. That's what I was trying to take you through. But you can continue with me first, and then I'll walk you through my line of logic.
So you're
But
stuck
no,
with the fact that I'm bringing up the United Nations in today. Fine, whatever. What if it's 1,000 AD? Let's say that there is a tribunal of countries that all agree that you may purchase from foreigners slaves. Would this increase or decrease slavery?
again, you have to put the caveat that's in for it to be analogous, you have to put the same caveat that's in the Bible verse, which is this is after a war. This is after a siege, after
Nope.
an attack.
Nope.
Yes, that's what it says.
Nope.
It says you could take them as captives.
No.
Yes, that's
no,
what
no,
it
no,
says.
no.
Show me
You're
the verse.
confusing the verses. I'm talking about specifically Leviticus 25:44-46, not the captives. So I'm going to read it to you again because you're not remembering. Your male
You
and
brought up
female
the
slaves are to
captives,
come from
like,
the
2
nations
seconds.
around you. From them you may buy slaves. You may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you and members of their clans born into your country, and they will become your property. You can bequeath them to your children as inherited property and can make them slaves for life, but you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're
So
confusing it.
we know for a fact that it is not regarding war, but even if none of that even matters. If it's 1000 AD and there's this giant tribunal, I don't know, Rome, whatever, tells all the nations, they send a letter to all the nations and say, you can go to foreigners and buy slaves. Would that increase, decrease, or stagnate the amount of slaves?
Well, it wouldn't. Those people are already. See, this is what you're missing. So, okay, I think I see it now. What you're missing. This is a slave trade that already existed. So it's not going to change the number of slaves at all. For that to happen, they would have to be told to go out and capture slaves and start a slave trade. These people someone else is just going to buy them. If I go into the store and I buy a bottle of water, does it increase the amount of water? Or did that water
I
already
would
exist?
imagine
I just went in there and bought
you're
it.
telling everybody to buy water.
But did I increase? No. You tried to take me down this line of logic. Did I increase the amount of bottles of water, or did I just buy?
By increasing demand, you would therefore increase
Now you're
supply.
reaping. Now there's no proof that back then that would be
That is exactly what would happen. The rules of economics
there was no more slaves to capture in the slave market? How do you know what would
engage
happen?
in all logic? Like it just understanding from a I would say a pretty obvious standpoint. If there was an X amount of nations that says, okay, no slavery abolished, no, we don't want slaves, but then you have some giant authority, and in this case, it would be the authority of the universe, saying you can go to foreign countries and buy slaves. That is, in fact, endorsing, encouraging, and advocating its proliferation. So that is your definition.
It isn't. You can go buy cigarettes.
And the reason why you won't answer
you can go buy a pack of cigarettes.
The reason why you will not answer the question,
I'm answering
is because
it
you know
I'm answering it right now. You can go buy cigarettes. Ought you do that?
What did I say? Anything about cigarettes?
I'm giving you something that's analogous. It's something that's not a good practice. You can go buy them. You can go buy them at the store for $15.99 or whatever they cost. That doesn't mean you ought do that thing. The Bible is regulating an economy that already existed. That's what you're not understanding. You're confusing a civil concession in the Bible from an ancient society with an ideal command. Where does God say, "Thou shalt buy slaves"?
Well, I mean, it's not just the ideal command.
Where does he say
it's
that?
actually your failure condition. I presented pretty concretely your failure condition to your face. You just are seeming to act as if that I didn't show you that. But if you did say, for example, if the government came and told people that you can buy cigarettes, then yeah, that would actually increase the proliferation and advocacy of cigarettes.
How do you know that that's a fact, though? Because they also put
that shows that's what happens in the past.
So maybe that doesn't.
The government had to go out and tell people explicitly that it's unhealthy for you, and then it reduced the demand for cigarettes.
When something is illegal, like whether it be prohibition in alcohol or like drug use, people want to do those things more. So sometimes making them legal doesn't cause the proliferation of that thing, and sometimes buying out things doesn't cause a market to react if there are no more of those things to supply. So you're smuggling in a lot of things to make your case that there's a slave trade, that every slave is immediately replaced with two more, would have to be the case for it to proliferate more slaves if I buy one. That slave already existed. The Bible isn't creating the slave. Again, it's just all it's doing is making a civil concession for the time. So this is what already existed. There was warring tribes all outside of Israel. They were operating under these laws and ways of operating anyway. So, and again, I've already told, I mean, we could keep going over these passages, but you're also not taking into account the continuity here, that there's a new covenant. So all these rules are, first of all, that's what they are. They're rules and regulations, as I already pointed out. And they're not even relevant anymore is the worst part. You don't even have to follow them. So I'd like you to establish where the moral ought is, especially if you take the entire Bible into account, because clearly that's not the case.
I already did. My intro literally did exactly that.
Where is that
And
moral?
then you go off and saying that that I'm referring to making things legal or illegal. We're not even talking about that. I'm saying that by
That's what you
stating
said.
you may buy slaves. If the government said
Right.
something along the lines of you may buy cocaine, then certainly the amount of cocaine as well as the demand for cocaine would proliferate.
That's
Therefore,
actually
would
not
be
certain.
a promotion.
That's
That's not
actually
hard to
not
determine.
certain. That's actually not certain that it. So when the government says you ought do things, that you can do things like that, there's huge taxes on it, and it takes some of the appeal away from people. So it's not as like of a dangerous thing to do. And I don't think most people want to do cocaine, so I don't think they really care if it's legal or not. So saying that if the government made it legal, and this stuff already existed, that's the point that you keep on missing, is that it was already in existence. That's where I'm trying to get with you, that they're regulating.
If it's in
system.
existence,
The Bible isn't saying
then it would promote
go
it.
create this system, go steal people and start selling them and create a slave trade. Nowhere does it say that. It's arguing, it's regulating from a system that already exists that it eventually dismantles. It just takes time to do that.
It took 1,000 years for it to dismantle,
it
but
took time.
regardless of that fact, even
not regardless,
after
important.
Jesus's death, slavery was still pretty pervasive. So the idea that it abolishes slavery, it certainly does not. And the fact that I could bring up literal slavers' accounts where they argue that they are endorsing slavery. And even by you made a grave error very early in. You said this is much nicer, referring to slavery, because they killed them.
Yeah,
By
but you
saying
can't
that,
use
hey, the
presentism.
alternative is much better. Slavery is much better than killing them. You're tacitly stating that they are promoting it with your own words.
No. What I'm saying is
Then
that
what were you
there was
referring
this
to when you
ancient
said
practice.
this
If you
is
look at
much
other
nicer?
codes, like the Hammurabi Code, they just killed their captives. So what I'm saying is we're moving in a direction that's morally better, that eventually gets rid of slavery. So there's no way you could say it promotes it. There's no way. And if you say that about slaveholders that cited the Bible incorrectly, you could also look at, like I brought up in my opening, Frederick Douglass, that is one of the number one abolitionists that specifically denounces that very thing and those slaveholders as not holding the correct view of Christianity, and then cites, which is clearly not, any book can be corrupted, but clearly all the abolitionists cite this image of God and being brothers in Christ is the reason that they couldn't continue the slave trade. So how that promotes, what's the golden rule of Christianity, dude? What is it?
Well, again, I mean, you're
What is
saying
it?
that we're moving in a direction
What
that's
is the
morally.
golden rule of
I have
Christianity?
to address what you're saying, right? I can't just
You won't
answer
answer
every
my
single
question?
question. I have to address what you're saying. You're stating
Sure.
that we're moving in a direction that's morally better, but it actually doesn't. It took well over 1,000 years. I think it's about 1,600 years, and then a giant civil war to get slavery to be abolished. And even then, rendered many Black Americans effectively second-class citizens. They were still salty about that. Even to this day, you have people who have the Confederate flag arguing for quote unquote states' rights. Of course, state rights to own a human being. But regardless of that point, if you're stating that that it was better than just simply killing them, then in reality, you're saying, well, slavery is better than killing them. That would mean that it is promoting slavery instead of killing slaves.
Yeah, but
I
that's
can't
not
make
what
it
the prompt is.
any simpler
No,
for
they're
you. No,
regulating,
the prompt is, does the Bible promote slavery?
which it
And all
doesn't.
I need to do, I don't need to produce, because there's a lot of contradictions in the Bible. This is one of them. The slavery thing is a huge one of them.
It's not.
Jesus is frightfully, he is completely absent on this whole thing. He doesn't answer a single thing regarding slavery, but he does say that, hey, you're all the flowery language, like we're all children of God, and we all come from that. But of course, you'll have Colossians as well as multiple verses that state specifically that slaves, you are to obey your earthly masters just as you would obey respect and fear, just as you would obey in Christ. It's very clear, even in New Testament, it does in fact promote slavery. And
Where exactly?
even by your own speech,
Where?
you acknowledge that it does promote slavery, considering the fact that you're saying, well, worse was to kill them.
Yeah, I'm pointing out the other codes of the time, the other regulations of the time. These are regulations. The other
Except it's
regulation
not.
of the time, not promotions. This
I
regulation is
literally
better than
showed you the
that
verse.
one. That's my claim, not the Bible's. The Bible doesn't say it. They're giving you regulations that are allowing you to move forward. And what you said, I want to go back also to the abolitionist slaveholders. Frederick Douglass answered this himself. He explicitly called Southern slaveholding in Christianity, I'm going to quote it, a wicked perversion, and contrasted with the pure, peaceful, impartial Christianity of Christ. So if you take someone who is citing the Bible for something that is clearly, especially if you follow the continuity of the Bible, which you haven't addressed at all. You said that Jesus doesn't say anything about it, but I read you a verse, I think it was Luke 14, where he specifically says, he says it twice, I came to bring liberty to the oppressed and freedom to the captive, or I can get you the exact quote again. So saying that it doesn't address it, it's specifically Jesus telling you why he came. And then also Paul in Philemon tells him, free, don't take your slave back, free your slave, I'll pay for it. This is the moral thing that we should do as brothers in Christ. So how is that a promotion of slavery? And not just regulations that existed in the Old Testament?
Because Jesus Christ was largely absent from speaking explicitly about slavery. He literally did not speak about it at all. You could word it in such a way by saying, I came to bring liberty to the oppressed and freedom to the captive. Therefore, he's referring to literal slaves and indentured servants. How do you know that Jesus Christ is not saying something along the lines of he's there to redeem your souls and that you will be free in the afterlife? Jesus had always said things like this. If I were Jesus, if I were him, I would probably say something along the lines of free the bonds, all indentured servants, slaves are to be free. If he said something like that, we would not be having this debate, but he never, ever said that. And
He
even
says
in New
it
Testament,
twice.
stating slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear, just as you would obey in Christ, in multiple books in the New chapter, in the New Testament, and you stating your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you, and from them you may buy slaves. You tacitly agreed that verse is better than doing what they typically do, which is to kill them, which would mean that's a promotion of slavery.
It's not a promotion. It's a comparison. It's not a promotion. Just because two things can be bad and then one thing is better than the other doesn't mean you're promoting that thing. It's not promoting either thing. It's dealing with the society of the time and choosing between two really bad choices. So it's not promoting it. And Jesus says it twice. We know he's not just talking about the Spirit because it's twice in the same sentence. He says, I'll read it again. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. This is Luke 4:18. Because he has anointed me to proclaim the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives, recovering of sight to the blind, and to set liberty to those who are oppressed. Let me ask you a question. In the New Testament, did Jesus literally recover sight to the blind, or what? Is that some metaphor also?
I don't believe in any of the miracles of the Bible, but if you're asking what specifically was said in the Bible, I'll grant you whatever was said in the Bible, as long as you're accurately reading out from the Bible verse.
So you're saying that Jesus in the Bible, he wasn't being metaphorical when he when he recovered someone's sight? He actually recovered their sight in the Bible story.
It says here,
Can you answer?
actually, the verse that you were pointing out is actually incorrect. You said, I came to bring liberty to the oppressed and freedom to the captive.
Liberty to the captives, and set at liberty those who are oppressed.
And this is Luke 4:18. Is
Yeah.
this correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So he was in Nazareth and he was on the Sabbath day. He went to a synagogue and he stood up and read a scroll of the prophet Isaiah.
Yep.
When it was handed to him, and he found the place where it is written, the Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners, not slaves, and recovery of the sight for the blind, and to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the years the Lord's Savior. Why would you say that was a slave as opposed to a prisoner?
Freedom for the oppressed. What is that? Like, whether or not I don't know what the exact, we'd have to look at the original Greek, I guess, and see exactly what that word is, as we have different translations, I guess. But even if he says it twice, he says it again, you just read it, liberty to the oppressed. And again, I asked
so
you,
once again,
he says, I came to bring sight to the blind. Did he actually do that? Or was he being, was he speaking in parables, or did he actually give sight to blind people? Did he spit on the dirt and rub the dirt in their eyes and then they could see? Did that happen? Yes or no?
The story goes that Jesus brought sight to the blind. I don't believe he ever did that, though.
I'm not asking if you believe. I'm saying, in the Bible, does it say that he actually brought sight? Is that what the Bible claims?
Yes, the Bible claims that he brought sight to the blind.
So why would it be in the exact same sentence? You said, how do we know it's not a spiritual command or something? Because they wouldn't say one literal sentence of things he's actually doing and then one parable. Like, they're telling you literally with commas, he's going to do this, this, and this. And one of them is bring freedom to the oppressed. And guess what? He did do that. It's funny that these abolitionists did cite Christianity as their reason for doing that. Isn't that funny? He says, I'm going to do it, makes a prediction. It's in the book. And then it happens and the people cite it. And saying,
it turns out he just happens to fail to do it for 1,000 years. It's only until 1600 years after the fact of Jesus Christ's death that, quote unquote, Christ did it. What a great, that's a terrible prophecy, considering it took 1600 years for it to do anything. And then secondly, your verse doesn't even refer to slaves. You are just simply reading into it that he's referring to oppressed people, which means therefore the slave.
What does liberty
here's the
mean?
Thing. They probably wouldn't even refer to them as oppressed. They would say that they are people that are captive because they took over or that they purchased it from foreigners, and so therefore is allowed. That's why it took 1600 years to get rid of it, because it is all over the Bible where it argues in favor of slavery. Even your very own verse doesn't do a very good job. Jesus Christ never explicitly says anything regarding slavery or the abolition of slavery.
What does liberty mean?
What does liberty mean?
Yeah.
Doesn't even say liberty in your verse. I pulled it up. It's not there.
What does your verse say?
I'll share it for everyone to see.
What does your verse say?
I'll share it for everyone to see.
What was the last line of the verse? The one you read.
The Spirit of the Lord. Hold on a sec. The Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor.
To set the
oppressed. Simply doesn't say that.
Liberty. Yours says free. That's even better. I was going to say liberty means freedom. So yours is actually even better.
But it's not even referring to slaves.
The oppressed free.
It doesn't even refer to slaves. Even if I use your verse,
and then
I'm being you are being insanely charitable. But on this verse, but when I bring to you a verse that very clearly endorses slavery, your argument was, well, that's better, which means that endorses slavery.
So what? That doesn't mean
I think
you're
that's pretty
promoting
obvious.
it.
So
if
what?
I say chemotherapy,
that's a concession for the argument there, my dude. Andrew, you just lost the debate.
Am I promoting it? If I say chemotherapy is better than death, am I promoing getting cancer?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
No, I'm not. It's a worst case scenario. That's not a promotion. A plan for a worst case scenario is not a promotion in any way.
It would be. It is.
It's not. It's not.
It is.
Again, it's a directive on how to on how to move in this ancient society that already
Yeah.
existed. So let me take you down a line of logic then, since I've been charitable and I've answered your question, right? Do you have any more, or
I mean,
I
I
want to get a
just
chance to question you as
you
well?
keep digging your heels in, and you're trying to read into the Bible things that it doesn't say.
You just read it.
And when I
Liber
showed
you
you
bring freedom
very
to the oppressed.
clearly what the Bible says, and you have to put yourself into twists once again,
How is that a
showing what it
twist?
did not say, and you made a very grave error. You did,
Not a grave
by
error,
tacitly saying, "Well, it's better."
but
That
that's
means that it
objectively
does promote
true. Is it
slavery.
better?
Sure, but
Okay, that doesn't
also
mean I
that would be
promote it.
promoting it.
That doesn't mean I
That would be
promote it.
promoting slavery.
No, it doesn't. Alcohol is better than heroin. Am I promoting
Yes, you're
alcohol?
promoting
No.
alcohol now.
That doesn't mean I could still say you shouldn't drink at all, right? That's not a promotion. Like I
Okay.
could say this thing is better than getting punched in the face is better
No.
than getting kicked in the balls. Am I promoting getting punched in the face? Like nothing you're saying actually
Yeah.
tracks logically. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
There's
it does,
no-
because I actually asked you very early in. I said, "What would it take to convince you that the Bible promotes slavery?" And you said that you would need an actual normative claim of what you ought to do, and you have to recognize that in the new covenant, of which I did substantiate. Yet here you are digging
Where
your
is it in the
heels
new
in.
covenant?
You have been provided the exact information that you need. We have a valid defeater, and you even yourself said that it does, that it's better, which would mean that it is promoting
No
slavery.
way, dude. In no way does something
Then
being
what do
better
I need to do
mean
to
promote.
convince you? Because I've already
In no way
provided
does
it
it
to you.
mean
Maybe
that.
if you want to shift the goalpost, maybe
That's
it'll
not
work.
shifting the goalpost. Those two
No,
things
I'm
don't mean
saying
the
you
same
can.
thing.
I'm giving you the option to shift the goalpost and change your criteria on what would be a failure condition, because I've already provided the exact failure condition you requested.
No, you didn't. You said the definition. You said you tried to catch me on proliferation. That's what you did. You tried to say, if we buy slaves, does it proliferate more slavery? I said to you, it doesn't.
No.
And we talked
No,
about things like supply and demand. So no, you did not prove that in any way. And then you said that in the New Testament, it continues this promotion of slavery, which you also didn't show. I'm showing you words from Jesus himself, words from Paul himself, telling you
Absent.
not to do these things,
No,
and that Jesus is
absent.
going to free the oppressed. You literally, I was going to use the
In
word
the
liberty, which
afterlife.
is harder. You used the word free. You brought the word free the oppressed into
afterlife.
it, right next to a line where he says, "Restore sight to the blind," which you admitted in the book he literally did in the context of the book. So no, dude, your logic is way off here. It doesn't track.
I mean, you could
that
say
saying
that the
one
logic is
thing
way off,
better
but I
than
asked
the
you for
other
your
is a
failure condition. I
promotion in
provided
any way.
exactly that, and you seem to kind of twist yourself into knots to make it
It's
not
not
work.
twisting in
And
knots.
also, the debate prompt, so you're aware, is the Bible promotes slavery, and I've shown, even by your criteria, that the Bible does indeed promote slavery, even if I acknowledge verses that could insinuate that slaves ought be free. This does not remove early Old Testament verses, nor does it revoke the New Testament verses where it explicitly gives further rulings on slavery. This is why it took over 1600 years for slavery to become abolished after Jesus Christ's death.
No, it does actually. See, you're smuggling that in. You're saying that I agreed based on the definition, which I just brought up 2 seconds ago, the proliferation, which I said, no, there's no proof that would be the case, that it would proliferate slavery. For that to happen, for there to be more slaves, there would possibly have to be another neighboring village for them to attack and enslave and then sell them to the Israelites. So no, it doesn't mean that it's going to proliferate it. So I deny, I'm not agreeing with that part of your argument. So no, it's not correct. So how exactly did you get, based on my definition, that I agreed that it was promotion? And where in the New Testament did you show that it continues this into the New Testament? When I'm showing you,
I provided multiple
and
verses.
Jesus.
I provided multiple verses.
Which verse?
But let me take a look
in the
here.
New
Where
Testament?
is the definition that you provided? I have it written down here. My apologies. It says here that your definition is to endorse, encourage, or advocate for its proliferation.
Correct.
So I'm assuming proliferate as in more of that thing, right?
Again,
And
proliferate
so
the slave trade
if
is
someone,
not happening here.
if, for example, the government stated that you may buy cocaine, then certainly the amount of cocaine as well as the demand for cocaine would indeed proliferate and therefore be a promotion of cocaine. If God told the
No.
Israelites from foreigners, you may buy slaves, if God told them that you may buy slaves, then certainly an amount of slaves as well as the demand for slaves would proliferate and therefore be a promotion.
It doesn't follow that the amount of slaves would proliferate because you bought some. Like, again, you're using presentism. Those people were already slaves. Look, I don't know what you're fucking laughing about. Like, they're already slaves. So
That's
you've not shown
proliferating
that
it.
buying one is going to spontaneously combust more slaves. More slaves automatically exist now because I bought one. That you haven't proved that at all. Not even close. Again, you're using presentism. It doesn't apply here. You can't say
I
that
don't
just
need to
because I
use
bought a-
presentism. I can
and-
use anything. If I have if I state something along the lines that you may buy cattle from foreigners, then certainly the amount of cattle as well as the demand for cattle would proliferate and therefore be a promotion.
No,
I don't
that's
need
not
it to
certain.
be modern to realize that when you say you may go out and to these areas and purchase this thing, that it is I mean, is a commercial to you a promotion?
Well, it depends. You can have commercials like public service announcements that are not
Okay, fair
promoting
enough.
things that are
If I
actually. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you can have commercials that that offer that tell you how to regulate certain situations, just like this, as far as like PSAs go. So no, it's not necessarily promotion, and it doesn't follow that just because. Again, saying that you can go to this neighboring town and purchase a slave is not promotion. It's regulating a current system that already exists. Nowhere does it say go set up a slave trade, capture these people, sell them as slaves, do this, sell these. It doesn't say that. It's saying you can go buy this already existed. So it's not promoting the slave trade at all. Or I'll give you an example. If there's only X amount of diamonds in the world and you buy one, did I proliferate more diamonds?
Yes, because that would
Where'd they
create
come
an
from?
induced demand, which would increase the price of diamonds, albeit a very tiny margin. But yes, it would increase people wanting to supply diamonds because there is a demand for diamonds.
Yeah, but if there are no more, then you can't. Then supply and it's not going to matter. You
Well,
can't
then the
fill the
price of
supply.
the diamond would increase.
But if there's no supply, it doesn't matter. You're not proliferating it because there isn't any more. So there isn't any more. That's what I'm saying. How
But
were
it's not
these
like that
slaves?
there was
How
like
did
a
they get these
finite amount
slaves?
of slaves. There were foreigners around them,
How did they
and they
get
could
the
just
slaves?
go out and buy slaves because God said you can.
But how
Now,
did they
like
get the slaves?
I'm actually kind of curious. Let's say if there was a public service announcement that says from 7-Eleven.
Let me fix that.
Oh,
I can hear you.
if I said from 7-Eleven, you may buy a Reese's Fast Break. Would that commercial, would that be a promotion?
It depends on what was in the commercial. Like just saying you may do something is not a promotion. We already established that. Like you may go buy heroin. I'm not promoting it just because I'm saying you may do it. You may go out on the street and do it. You do whatever the fuck you want. Doesn't mean I'm promoting it. No, it doesn't mean that.
Okay.
And if there were no more of those things, what did you say we could buy? What was the example you used?
Okay, hold on. So
Wait, let me
now,
finish my response. What was the example? What was the thing you used in the example?
from 7-Eleven, you may buy a Reese's Fast Break.
Right. Okay. So
I'm not
if they
sponsored by
weren't
Reese's. I
making,
just really
if
like
there
Reese's
were
Fast
no
Breaks,
more
by the way.
Reese's Fast Breaks, right? It's not going to proliferate the amount of them. That's what I'm saying.
But
There's
if
only
you
a
increase
set
the
number.
demand of Reese's Fast Break,
But if they're not
it
making
would
any more of them,
encourage
what's the
Reese's to
difference?
make more Reese's Fast Breaks.
But what if they don't have the ingredients to make more? That's what I'm saying.
What?
Where did they get these slaves from?
Okay, I mean,
Where did they get?
I didn't
the
think that this
slaves
was going to
from?
turn into like
Where did they
a
get the
supply and
slaves
demand
from?
argument.
Where
But
did they get them from?
if I said here, for example, your Reese's Fast Breaks and Reese's products are to come from your 7-Elevens around you. From there, you may buy Reese's Fast Breaks. Is that a promotion for a Reese's Fast Break or no?
That's not what this is doing. This is a regulation. If you had a regulation,
I'm just
handbook,
curious. I'm
is it-
asking, is it a promotion?
if you're putting, it depends. If you're putting it on TV,
What do you mean?
and
I just did it.
that's
Listen,
not
here's
what
the
this
commercial.
is
Are you
at
ready?
all. This
I'm
is a
gonna do the commercial
regulation
with
of an
you. Okay,
ancient
hold on.
practice.
Maybe I
You're
can put on,
you're talking about.
We'll do a commercial. We'll do it live. All right.
My
I
man,
got a MAGA hat on.
again, you're using presentism.
All right, here we go. Here we
We're
go.
talking about an
Here we
ancient
go.
practice. I'm
we
asking you
go.
where the slaves came
Are you ready for the
from.
commercial?
Where,
Here's the commercial.
have I
The
answered
commercial
every
is-
one of your fucking questions? Where did the slaves
The commercial
come from?
is
Where
uh,
did the slaves come from? Moderator.
Hey,
you're
everybody.
just making me answer.
If
questions
I
the
can,
whole
if
time.
I
You're
can
not
try to,
engaging with any
if
of
I
my
can,
questions.
oh yeah, if I can just try to cross a bridge here for a second, I think what's happening is, because I don't think Andrew necessarily disagrees with what you're saying, Amender, about supply and demand. I think Andrew's saying in your Reese example, there's no more Reese's to be made, as in there's no more people to be slaves. If that helps understand what Andrew's saying here. I
there's
don't think he
effectively
disagrees
an
about supply
infinite.
and demand. He's saying there's no more slaves to be slaves.
That's what I was
There's an
asking. Where are they
there's
getting
an
the
infinite
slaves? You
amount
can't
of
compare it
foreigners.
to
You don't have
Reese's.
enough. You don't have enough people in your nation to buy all the people in other nations from foreigners.
How did
So
they buy? No,
in
no,
the
no,
same way of a purchasing a Reese's Fast Break,
no.
if a lot of people are buying Reese's Fast Break, this encourages the Reese's company to make more Reese's Fast Break. So that in effect is a promotion of a Reese's Fast Break. So let's say again, and I, all I did was say, hey, your Reese's products and Reese's Fast Breaks are to come from the 7-Eleven around you, and from them you may buy a Reese's Fast Break. I think from anybody thinking about this and looking at this would realize if I said that, obviously it's a promotion of a Reese's Fast Break. Am I wrong?
That's the Hume is-ought fallacy. No, it isn't. You're saying this is what
not an is-ought fallacy.
not
It says
what
you
ought
may buy
be.
it.
No, absolutely not. You're confusing the is and the ought.
It's
Your statement
obviously
was
a
literally an
promotion.
is statement.
Well,
You said
let
there
Andrew
is a
answer.
you use the word is. There is a 7-Eleven on the corner, and you may do this thing. So no, that's a Hume's is-ought fallacy, sir. No, that is incorrect. It doesn't promote that thing by any means. There's no you ought buy Reese's. Where is that in your sentence? And again, I ask you
the fact that you may buy them.
Huh?
Because it says specifically that you may buy them.
Yeah, just because you
promotion.
may do something doesn't mean you ought do that thing.
Sure, but it is telling you can go out there and buy it. In fact, it actually would be an ought in that case.
No, it's not an ought.
It is.
It's giving you a regulation based on what's going on. Again,
it's saying you have the choice to or not
where did they
but
get
you
the
can,
slave?
right? And honestly, if you think about it, it is, it is more I guess it's providing to them what did you say earlier? You said that it was hold on, I had it written down here. Let's see. You said that this is much nicer because normally they killed them. So this is actually it's a suggestion to do the nice thing, which is to slave them and not kill them.
Again, you're going back to that why because you lost.
Yeah, because
I don't understand.
No,
why
it's
you're
not.
going,
No, I mean,
I already addressed that.
To me, it's obvious,
my
right? In the 7-Eleven ad, that it is promoting that. I don't even have to say that you have to buy that. I can just promote it, and then that would be enough. And right here in the Bible, it says pretty explicitly, and this is just one verse. There's many verses like this. So it's obvious to me. But for whatever reason,
this whole thing
you want to dig your heels in because
that's where
I get it. I get it. You're a Christian,
all over the place,
and knowing that your Bible.
Let's let Andrew answer to what you're saying there.
Yeah, you're spinning all over. The whole way this started is you said because of my definition that I gave, proliferation would occur if you bought more slaves based on supply and demand. What I'm saying to you that you will not address is that there's a finite amount of slaves. So it doesn't necessarily follow that you will proliferate slavery by interacting in said slave trade. Yes or no?
Yes, it does result in increased supply. Yes.
Okay. What if there's a finite amount and there are no more?
That's not possible. You're one nation. You have many nations around you.
Right. And what if they don't have the military capacity or the will to fight, or
it's not a matter of military capacity. You could just go to a foreigner and ask for a slave and they'll buy it. It has nothing to do with
it doesn't
a military
necessarily
ability.
follow that it's going to proliferate the practice, that there is scenarios where you could go there and purchase the slave and it doesn't proliferate more slaves. Yes or no? Be honest.
Sorry, what's your question? One more time. I was looking something up.
There is a scenario, multiple scenarios, where you could go purchase a slave and it would not proliferate more slaves, as you were saying. Does that scenario exist? Yes or no?
No.
It doesn't? What if there's no more slaves to buy?
Then I suppose there would be no more slaves, but there were plenty of slaves.
Want to go capture more slaves. That's
actually what happened with the slave trade. When you had people show up, they would purchase slaves and then they would pay money and then they would leave. This actually created an induced demand between tribes where if they captured another tribe, they could sell them off to slavery. And that was beneficial for everybody involved. So it was a constant battle getting people captured, getting them sold off to slavery. So by the creation of that demand of slavery, it in fact did increase the overall amount of slaves.
Again, you're talking about the supply. I mean, you're talking about the demand. I'm talking about the supply. So I'm asking you,
these are interrelated.
You just said, say that again. I didn't hear you.
These are interrelated concepts.
Right.
By
but
increasing demand
individually,
it dictates.
You can have a demand without a supply, right?
You can have a demand without a supply. Yes, that's possible.
Okay. So is it possible that you could have a demand for slaves without a supply?
All right. Well, I don't know what to tell you. Here,
is that possible? Yes or no?
I'll provide this. I mean, I don't know.
Like, answer the question.
What do you know in
everyone? I just want you to realize he will not answer the question.
What do you know about
because it destroys his whole argument.
All right, sorry. Go ahead. What was the question? Because
is it possible that you can have a demand for slaves without the supply?
I've already answered this. Yes, it is possible to have a demand without there being existing any supply. Sure.
Right. You answered it in reference to something else. I wanted to verify that you were also
granting in a hypothetical.
So now I'm showing you that everything you were saying about my definition, and therefore if we buy slaves, we're proliferating more slaves, you just conceded is not true. It doesn't follow that necessarily happens. You just conceded that. So what is your next point?
Well, because when you buy more of a product, do the prices rise?
That's not proliferation. That's not creating more slaves.
I'm not asking that. I'm saying when you buy more of a product, do prices rise?
It depends. So again, you could be buying more of a product and that same day they get an influx of supply and the price drops. Is that possible?
No. Basic Econ 101 would tell you that when prices rise,
it's supply and demand exceeds
supply. When demand exceeds supply, that does in fact increase prices.
But that's a different thing. Now you said
which
demand
prompts
that's a
higher production. I mean, I could give you the
that's a different question.
I'm not making this up when I'm saying when you are purchasing slaves. But again, you're going way off into left field.
I'm going
we have to talk about supply demand metrics.
Your line of logic, bro.
No, it's not because it's to me, and I think I hope everybody else that obviously if you say from your male or female slaves are to come from the nations around you, from them you may buy slaves. That's a promotion. That's a promotion of slavery.
Okay, so if the price of slaves increases, does the demand for slaves go down? Wouldn't that also follow then?
Quantity demanded would decrease.
Okay, so then what the fuck are you talking about, bro? Okay, so then there's no promotion there. Like there's no proliferation based on that definition.
It is.
It isn't. What if there's
because when prices increase, this encourages supply to supply more.
If you could, just for like everyone's sake here, because I feel like we're getting a little off field. If you could just tie in how the price and supply and demand ties into the promotion for us.
Me? It's
Well,
your
no, I'm asking.
it's your
Yeah, I'm
analogy.
asking
I'm
you,
just going
Amanda.
based off what you're
Like how,
saying.
It doesn't.
like how
my
it ties
argument
into the
has nothing to
promotion.
do with supply and demand.
Bro,
He
you brought
pulled
up
that-
supply and
he
demand to try
pulled
and
that-
get me on the
All right,
definition.
I'm sorry. Was I supposed to
You're a
respond,
slippery
or is
motherfucker,
this
dude.
the?
You
or is
brought
this
up
the
supply
Andrew?
and demand
Hold on.
to get
He
me on
asked
my
me to
definition. I didn't bring
clarify,
it up.
and I'm
You brought
trying
it
to
up.
explain
And now
it.
because it doesn't
Hey,
work, you want to
Speakeasy,
fucking
can I get some
discard it?
control?
Yeah, let Amanda just explain how the supply and demand and the pricing ties into the promotion here.
Okay, so this has absolutely nothing to do with my argument. It's actually Andrew's argument, where he was saying that if you have more people buying slaves, does that result in there being more slaves? His answer is no, but a basic supply demand chart would tell you that yes, it does increase proliferation of slavery, because what you're doing is that you're giving a price signal to get more slaves, because there's a profit incentive. But regardless of that, I don't need any of that. It says plain as day, your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them, you may buy slaves. You may specifically go to a foreign nation and purchase slaves. This is God talking to Moses, saying, this is what you may do, which is in
regulating the
promotion
system.
of slavery. I don't need to apply any supply demand, nothing.
He's regulating the system that already exists. Promotion of slavery would be go set up a slave trade and sell slaves. That would be promotion of slavery. Like what they're saying is this system already exists. It already exists, and this is how you should operate inside of it. And you walked back exactly what you said about the supply and demand thing, because you knew you were wrong on it. That's the only reason you did that. You just tried to smuggle it in again, but you conceded already that there could be a case where supply isn't available, even though there's a demand. You just conceded that 5 minutes ago. So it doesn't follow that it would proliferate if you purchase more slaves, that there would proliferate more slaves. You already conceded that. So you can't even follow your own logic from 5 minutes ago.
All right, let's try it this way. From the death of Jesus Christ to, I don't know, when slavery was abolished, right before slavery was abolished, was there more or less slaves?
What was the question?
Okay. So Jesus died to right before the abolition of slavery, right?
Yep. From Jesus's death to
what time do you think that there were more slaves?
Well, there's more people so there's probably more as we move forward in history, but it's not the Christians. The Arab slave trade was far more systematic and brutal and continued far long after.
So
the Christians had to embargo. You know what the Ivory Coast embargo
another one
is?
Referencing Yahweh God, but we don't even have to talk about that. I agree with you there. There's even still slaves in Afghanistan to this day.
There's slaves in Sudan. There's slaves.
Yeah, I agree. So,
but that's not Christian.
If it increases,
right? So if the Bible's promoting
after having the Bible and Jesus and all that good stuff, it seems to have proliferated. It's fair to say.
What? Say that again.
It seems to have proliferated from the time of Jesus's death
by Christians
to the day right before the abolition of slavery.
Not by Christians. It was proliferating.
No, by Christians. We're talking about the United States.
Christians had the slave trade for the shortest amount of time, literally the shortest amount of time, and they abolished it.
And what happened? It proliferated, did it?
They fucking abolished it. They fought and died to free these slaves. They embargoed the coast of Africa, so the Africans.
They just went a really long time of having and could buy from foreigners slaves, and they were going to foreign countries buying slaves.
Say again.
So I just want to be clear, right? Because it says here, your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them, you may buy slaves. You don't believe that this proliferates, despite the fact that it did proliferate. Despite all of the teachings of Jesus Christ in the Bible, it still proliferated.
That specific time.
Did it or did it not proliferate?
No, it doesn't. That doesn't follow at all.
This guy's a clown. You're like antithetical to reality. All
No,
right,
dude,
okay.
you're
I think I'm
antithetical
good.
to
If I-
reality. Christians fought and died to free the slave
I'm
trade and
done.
then cited the Bible as the reason that they did it. And you're like, they proliferated it. No, they fucking
It
ended
did.
it. And you're disrespecting them, the people that died to do that, by laughing about it. They fucking
I'm not.
ended
I'm
the
not
slave trade.
disrespecting
The
anybody.
first in
You're the
history.
one
The Arabs kept doing it long.
that's
They
got it
still do it
incorrect.
today. They still practice chattel slavery today.
Yeah,
in
also
Sudan.
bad. I'm not
Today.
promoting their slavery either.
So
Like, I don't
these
know what this
Christians
argument
are
is.
citing Christianity, Frederick Douglass, William Wilberforce.
Yes, whether or not that
They're
the Bible
citing
promotes
the
slavery, and
reason
it
that
does.
they're
I showed
doing
you
it.
that
They're
exact
telling
the
you,
exact
I'm
verses that show
doing
that.
this because why? What did they say?
Huh? I don't
What
know.
did those
I don't know what you're
abolitionists say?
trying to say.
What did they say? I've said it.
I don't know.
before.
Frederick
William
Douglass
Wilberforce-
was like slavery bad. I don't know.
No. What
All
did they
right,
say
so-
the reason was, yeah.
So I was just gonna say that brings us to an hour. But like I said at the beginning, if you guys want more time of open floor, I'm open to it. If both of yous wanted it, if you felt like there was something else, some other point you guys wanted to get to, we spent quite a bit of
I would
time
like
on.
I would like to ask him just a couple of questions, considering the entire time he wouldn't answer any of my questions.
I did. I answered all questions.
And
you
just
did.
yeah, but I also want the opportunity to question you,
Sure.
if I could, just for a few minutes.
Sure.
Okay.
Are
appreciate
you open to that, Amender? And we can
Sure.
put another 15 minutes on the floor.
Let's not make it 15 minutes. I can answer a few questions and let's go to Q&A. I don't have all night.
it. Okay. Well,
All
first,
right, we'll put 10 then for now, and then
Fine.
see where we go from there.
fine. Thank you. Okay. So I believe you agreed to this earlier, but just to get the whole line in, I'm going to ask one more time. You agree that there's a moral and logical distinction between a law that promotes an ideal versus a law that regulates a pre-existing
You've already
broken practice?
asked this. I said yes.
I know. I'm trying to get through the line. You wouldn't let me do it before. So yes, you agree with that. Okay. Did Moses or God invent slavery in Genesis, or was slavery already a universal across the entire ancient Near East?
No, slavery existed way before the Bible.
Okay, perfect. So can you point to me a single verse in scripture where God commands believers to go out, raid a peaceful town, kidnap people, and establish a slave trade?
Yes.
Where does he tell them to establish a slave trade?
Leviticus 25:44.
No, he tells them to take captives from war. I'm asking if you could point to a verse where he asked them to establish a slave trade. And then
Leviticus
Exodus
25:44.
21, Exodus, we're going all the way back. 21:16 mandates the death penalty for anyone that steals a human being, right?
What was the verse?
Exodus 21:16 mandates the
Verse
death penalty for anyone who
21:16.
steals a human being.
Anyone who
Didn't biblical
kidnaps
law
someone is to be put
explicit-
to,
let me
de-
finish
to
the
death,
question.
whether the victim has been sold or is still in the kidnapper's possession. So basically, when someone is physically arresting somebody without any just cause, therefore they are to be death. But that doesn't really
Okay,
remove
wait.
slavery. That just means
So-
you can't unjustly grab somebody randomly.
Correct. You cannot go kidnap a person and
Yeah.
sell them into bondage. So doesn't that tell you that the Bible is explicitly outlawing the entire supply chain? That's why I was trying to ask you, where do these slaves come from? The Bible here in Exodus is explicitly outlawing the entire supply chain of historical chattel slavery. The entire supply chain.
It
and
it
then I ask
doesn't,
you
because
again,
people
what's the-
go out and they want to make money, so they get slaves. They themselves do not have to kidnap. Someone else does the kidnapping for them, and then they buy a slave lawfully by the virtue of God.
Right. But what I'm saying is that the Bible is explicitly saying you can't do this. So there's no way that it's promoting it. It's not promoting the slave trade. Again, it's regulating an existing trade. If it was promoting the slave trade, it would be saying to go out and do this thing, go out and capture people and sell them as slaves. That's not what it's saying. Literally, you can't do that. Literally, don't do that is what it's saying. And it's saying this is how you're going to operate inside this a broken system that already exists, which you just granted. So what I'm trying to show you is it's not promoting slavery. It's telling you how to act inside this broken system, and then eventually gets to the point where it is the thing that causes the abolition of slavery, which you also kind of already granted. So what I'll ask you one last time also, what is the golden rule of Christianity?
The golden rule: do harm unto others as you would have harm done unto you, or do not do harm unto others.
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that alone, that being the golden rule after Jesus already tells us that he came to free the oppressors, in a line that we just showed wasn't like metaphorical, shows that the Bible doesn't promote slavery. You're not allowed to kidnap people. You're supposed to, Jesus is coming to bring freedom from the oppressors, and it's literally telling you that it doesn't promote these things. So that's what I'm trying to get you to understand, that there's a difference between operating in a system that already exists, which you also granted already, that this system already existed, and proliferating something or promoting it.
Gotcha. None of that argues against my point, however. And given the fact that it's better than it is to kill them, you already know that it's proliferation.
No,
You already
that's
know.
not proliferation. We already
It
went
is.
over this like 50 times. You have to go back to it because you
Yeah,
can't
you're
stay
just
on the
digging
line
your
of
heels
logic
in.
that
You're
I
just
got
pointing
you
out
on.
the reality.
Dude, huh?
You didn't get me on anything. You just brought up other things that are not related to the quote.
It's not related. If
Mhm.
I'm going to show you how a line of logic works. If you
Mm.
agree that there's a distinction between between a law that
I agree.
promotes
There's a lot
and
of
regulates,
contradictions
and
in the
then
Bible.
you
I
agree
agree.
that it was invented prior to this book,
Yeah.
and then you agree
Yeah, and it was
that
just
there's,
around
that
for
there's not a
1600
single verse that
years.
says you
And
can
then
kidnap
even with
people and
Jesus'
establish a
teachings.
slave trade, and then you agree finally that Exodus mandates the death penalty for anyone that does. You have simply proven that the Bible doesn't promote slavery, bro. That's what that proves logically. I know that that's a problem for you, but that's what it proves. And then when you do
It's
cite
not
the
a problem. I don't have any. I don't have any
granted
allegiance
every one of those premises.
to the Bible. You, however, do. I'm able to look at things like the Bhagavad Gita or the Quran, read these things, and to me, it's like they're quaint mythologies. Same thing with the Bible; it is a quaint mythology. When I read, your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you; from them you may buy slaves. I'm like, okay, it's arguing in favor of slavery. That
because you
makes sense.
granted there's
It's
a
an
difference
ancient
between that.
time.
You just
People
granted
had
it.
used this
This
as
guy
an
can't even
argument for
follow
a
me,
long
Grant.
time. There was a lot of white supremacy that existed, and the white supremacy also used the Bible. From them you may buy slaves. And I bring up white slavers and gave you direct quotes from the books of white slavers where they specifically use the Bible in and of itself to justify slavery. You
You
say
can't
that's
grant
not the
something
case.
and then smuggle it back in like you didn't grant it. You already granted that there's a difference
I've
between
provided all of it. You
promoting
just
and
haven't
regulating. And then
rebutted
you
any
gave
of
me
it.
a regulation and said it
You
was
haven't
promotion.
rebutted any of it.
Huh?
You haven't rebutted any of it.
This
You
is
just
the
brought up
rebuttal.
other verses and said, well, what about these other verses? Fine,
No, I'm telling you,
great. There's a lot
continuity
of
in
contradictions
Christianity
in the
that
Bible.
ends with the
I
abolition of
acknowledge that
slavery
there's
that you granted.
contradictions in the Bible. Despite that fact, it was still used to promote slavery for
It's not
about
promoting, it's
1600 years
regulating.
after
You
Jesus
granted there's a
Christ's death.
difference. You just read a regulation. You may go to this
It's not a regulation.
neighboring
It's
place,
literally telling you what to
that's a
do.
regulation.
It's not regulating the ownership. It's saying you can go out there and buy some slaves.
From your neighboring, it's not saying just that. There's an entire regulation. You read it
there's
out.
actually an
From
entire
it tells
chapter
you what to do
that
with
tells
them,
you how to
where you can
treat
buy them
slaves,
from.
what to
That's
do
a
with slaves.
regulation, my man. And you granted there's a difference. That's why I'm telling you that the line of logic does follow and does rebut what you're saying. Because if you go through each thing that you granted, you end up with the Bible not promoting slavery. So you can't grant each one of them and be like, oh, I don't understand what you're saying. You do understand what I'm saying. And the first thing that you granted was the difference between regulation and promotion. And then you haven't refuted anything I say. How do you refute the things that Jesus says in Luke 14 or the golden rule of Christianity or Paul's letter to Philemon, where he says he'll pay for it. Don't enslave this person. I will pay out of my own pocket.
None of those explicitly talk about the abolition of slavery. Not a single one.
The entire fucking time.
None of those talk about the abolition of slavery. Not a single one. Not a single one of those. Does it talk about that?
Not a single one of what?
I agree with you, though, that in the 1800s, there were people that ad hoc reasoned abolition of slavery by using those verses. I agree with that. But the Bible verses themselves do not say that. They don't say that.
Slavery.
It's pretty clear and explicit about slavery throughout the Bible and God himself saying it. So, I mean, you could just kind of, I don't know, I guess we could agree to disagree. I mean, we didn't even bring up, for example, like the fact that Noah decreeing that his son Ham and his descendants shall be slaves in Genesis 9:18 to 27. Is it the punishment for Ham's crime of seeing his father naked? Was that not the part where he said that you can have slaves there? or do we refer
Again,
to
they're
what are we doing?
regulating an ancient society that already had slaves.
Which
I don't know
promotes
why you can't
slavery.
make this distinction when you granted that you can make
If
this
you're saying
distinction.
that it is there in the ancient society and it does not express the abolition of slavery, that would mean it is promoting slavery.
It doesn't mean that. They're not.
It's
Okay,
pretty obvious.
So one last question, and then we could go to the closing. If you're, I think I might have even asked you this earlier. Like if you are, let's say you're a completely innocent man, right? This is the same exact logic, and you are wrongfully imprisoned. It's a terrible thing that happened to you, and I tell you, listen to the guards. Don't fight the guards. Listen to them. And I give you regulations on what to do. Am I promoting you being wrongfully imprisoned, or am I just trying to help you in a really
You're
shitty
promoting
situation?
me to listen to the guards.
That's the same thing as saying, listen to your slaveholder. Like you're wrongfully imprisoned. Your freedom has been taken away. In this scenario, you're wrongfully imprisoned, wrongfully in this scenario. So I'm saying I'm not promoting that by giving you advice on how to stay alive. That's not promotion. That's you're in a really bad situation, and I'm giving you instructions on how to get out of it. That's what that is. So again, you've already granted that there's a difference between regulation and promotion. But every time you bring up a regulation, you cite it as a promotion every time. So I don't think that's a good faith way to debate.
I all I did was ask you for a failure condition and I provided it. But
yeah, and you also granted that there are cases where there could be I could purchase a slave and that doesn't proliferate more slaves. You granted that too. That there could be a supply, no supply, even though there's a demand. You granted that. So you keep granting all these positions and then walking it back with your own arguments. You don't even understand
walk
what
it back.
you're granting.
It's all the same argument.
You don't understand what you're actually granting, though. You obviously
I know what I'm granting. I understand.
Because you keep bringing it up after you already granted it. Like these are clearly regulations.
Yeah,
you
can
do
be
this
correct
thing,
at the same
you can't
time.
do this thing. You can do this. You can go to the neighboring. That's a regulation. That's not go do this thing, proliferate it, fill the land with more slaves, but go next door, capture them, sell them on an open market. It never says anything like that. Nothing. All it does is give you regulations for something that already existed. It regulates an ancient practice that was already there. That's all it does. And there's no instance where it's setting up a slave trade or starting one for the first. It doesn't. It already existed, and they're regulating it, which you granted also.
All right. So that is going to wrap up the open floor. All right. Excellent back and forth exchange from both sides. We're now going to enter into the final phase of the debate, the closing statements. Quick reminder to everybody in the live chat, the Q&A is there for you to put your questions in. So if you got some questions for either debater, make sure you drop them in now. But remember, the Super Chats, PayPal, Cash App questions, they will take priority. So if they fill up the whole 30 minutes, we may not get to all of those ones. So if there's something you really want answered, send it through one of those priority options and we'll make sure it gets asked. With that being said, we're going to move into closing. Each debater gets 5 minutes to make their final case. We're going to start with handing it over to First Amender. Whenever you're ready for your closing statement, go ahead and I'll start the timer up with your voice.
All right. Well, I would say at the end of this debate, I think that the disagreement comes down to like a simple question. What does it mean to promote something? Now, I'm not claiming that the Bible invented slavery, nor am I claiming that every form of biblical slavery was identical to American chattel slavery. My claim is pretty narrow and it's pretty consistent with the position is the Bible does permit, regulate, or legitimizes slavery. So if a government says something along the lines of you may purchase cocaine, it does not need to say that I encourage you to buy cocaine for the law to facilitate its proliferation. Likewise, when the Bible says that you can acquire a slave from foreign nations and treat those slaves as inheritable property, it is creating, in fact, a legal framework that allows slavery to continue. You do not need an explicit command that says go enslave people for permission and regulation to promote that institution. So pointing out that Christians later use the Bible to oppose slavery doesn't actually erase any of the passages that permitted it. The existence of abolitionist interpretations proves that the Bible can be interpreted against slavery, but it doesn't prove that the Bible itself consistently condemns slavery. So the challenge is simple: is if you believe that the Bible does not promote slavery, then explain a text that actually permits people to acquire, own, and inherit human beings as property, does not, by definition, promote, as what we established, contribute to the continuation and legitimacy of slavery. That was the claim that I came here to defend, and sadly, it was not refuted. And I see the rest of my time.
All right. Thank you for that closing statement. And with that, we'll hand the mic back over to Andrew. Andrew, whenever you're ready for your closing statement, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
Sure. I'm sure everybody noticed he wouldn't answer or engage with any of my questions until forced at the end by the moderator. Yeah, you're laughing, but you wouldn't the entire time until forced by the moderator to do so. And still, when doing that, use all the things that he already granted and then pretended like he didn't grant them and smuggled them back into his arguments. We can go back and watch you grant each one. You just can't follow your own logic that it doesn't actually promote slavery. And you said that I didn't cite any places where it said not to do it, except Paul specifically tells them I did cite Philemon, as where Paul specifically says, don't do this. And he even offers to pay for it and says, this isn't, you need to treat them as brothers in Christ, not slaves. And then Jesus says, I came to free the slaves, free the oppressed. So what you're saying, that there's not and you did say in your closing that there wasn't an explicit command to purchase slaves. You said that in just now. So because there isn't using an it, you can't turn an is into an ought. The Bible is saying this is the way that it is, and this is what you can do under that situation. It doesn't mean you ought do that thing. There's lots of things that exist that you can do that we can give you regulations that for. That doesn't mean you should do those things or promote the proliferation of those things in any way. So because of that, he's not showing us. He even just admitted in his closing there is not one explicit command to promote slavery in the Bible. So that's it.
All right. Thank you for that closing statement. So that's going to conclude the closing statements from both sides. And again, let me talk to the audience real quick. If you're enjoying what you're seeing, make sure you like the stream, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the debates we host here on Swords of Reason. We run all kinds of matchups, political debates, cultural, social issues, even video games get debated over here. Anything where there's a conversation worth clashing over, we bring it into the arena. And also, don't forget to go subscribe to tonight's debaters as well. Their links are in the description. Make sure you guys go show them support for stepping into the arena and sharpening their arguments tonight. So before I start the timer for the chat Q&A, I usually like to ask a question or two to each debater based off things I heard, something I want clarified, maybe a point I think deserves another pass. And then once we answer those, we'll begin the official 30-minute Q&A. So for my first question, I'll start on the affirmative side. So my first question is it was kind of based off a question you asked Andrew earlier, was basically like, what would the Bible have to say differently for you to conclude that it just tolerated and regulated an existing institution rather than promoted it?
It would have to say that we would want to abolish slavery. And also historically, I would have to see like a direct, large effort. Where in order to abolish slavery, but we observe 1600 years of further slavery, even after Jesus's teachings. It was a tall order.
All right. And then did you have anything you wanted to say to that, Andrew?
Yeah, that was my whole point. That's exactly what we did see. So Jesus specifically tells us that he's going to free the oppressed, and then we see the oppressed freed. And he's like, I don't know, I'd have to see them freed. Well, that's exactly what you saw, and they cited the Bible for that thing. That would be my response.
All right. All right. And then so then another question I had here for you, Amender, is if explicitly, like, if permitting it is counting as promoting that institution, would you be like committed to saying like the legalization of like cigarettes and alcohol would also be promoting those things?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. And did you have anything you wanted to say to that,
They
Andrew?
literally have a Surgeon General's warning on them that says, "Don't buy this; it's going to give you cancer." How is that a promotion? Like, something can be legal, and also there could be a huge warning not to do this thing.
That would not be a promotion.
Well, then you're wrong on what you just said. You just answered his
No, it's
question.
not.
What was your question, Speak, that you asked him?
It was based off like if permitting and regulating is like counts as promoting that institution. I was asking, would you be committing to saying that like the government legalizing alcohol and cigarettes is also promoting it? And he said yes.
And you said yes. And then I pointed out that there's a Surgeon General's warning on it. And you said, well, then it's not promoting. That's what I mean. You can't follow
That
your
the
own.
Surgeon General's warning is not promoting. It's telling you not to smoke.
Why
But
did they
the
put that Surgeon
legalization
General's
does
warning?
promote that cigarette. If
Why
it
did they
were
put the Surgeon
illegal,
General's
it would
warning?
be explicitly not promoting that. It not be promoting cigarettes.
Right. So what you just answered to him was incorrect. They only put
No,
the
no,
Surgeon
no.
General's
Two
warning
things
because the
can be
government
correct at the
tells them
same
they have
time.
to. So the government is
It's
saying
not a
you
black
can
and
buy
white
this thing,
dichotomy.
but you have to put this warning on it, right?
If it were illegal, there would be less people smoking.
You
But
haven't
if
demonstrated
you
that.
have that does happens
You
all the
haven't
time.
demonstrated it.
Okay.
You can laugh, but you haven't demonstrated
right.
that. Actually, we proved that you granted that
Gotcha.
less of a supply. There could be no supply, even though
Well, I
there's a
guess you
demand.
win the debate then, right?
Okay, you can't follow your own logic, dude. What do you want me to do? It's not my fault.
No, I pointed it out. You're just too not good at thinking. I don't know.
Okay.
All right. So then my first question for your side, Andrew, is so it's based on the verse we seem to talk about a lot during this debate. So where God explicitly like authorizes like and allows people to acquire humans, identifies whom they can acquire, all of that was in the verse. But what's the principled basis to call that just regulation rather than a positive institutional authorization?
Yeah, because regulating something again doesn't necessarily mean that you're promoting it. It could be the case, but in this case, it isn't. It's possible that you can like the two things are not mutually exclusive, right? So these are just regulations of an ancient and archaic practice that existed in the Near East ancient world that the Bible regulated for the first time. So you know who said that? Charlie Kirk. Like they've had this exact debate thousands of times. First Amender, you're not the first to make these arguments. That's why I bring that up. You can laugh, but Charlie did say that. He's had this debate. Thousands of people have had this debate. You're not presenting anything new.
Why would I respect Charlie Kirk at all? The guy literally said that he wanted to abolish the Civil Rights Act. That's so funny. You bring up Charlie Kirk. That's so cringy. Oh my God.
I think you might be the only one that feels that way. I've never heard him say
We
that, but this
are
isn't a
Charlie Kirk.
Okay.
We carry the flame.
So my second question
Made
for
myself
you,
look bad.
Andrew, is so basically it's kind of almost what Amender asked of you earlier, but what would the text actually have to say for you to say like, yeah, that's promoting slavery? Like,
Yes.
what would be like the minimum textual standard?
Well, it would have to say you have to go out and start a slave trade, because then it wouldn't be regulating an existing practice, right? It would be promoting this practice. Like, even if it existed other places and they said, go out and start the slave trade, sell slaves, do this, capture. If that's what it said, then it would be promoting slavery. But that's not what it's giving you guidelines on how to operate in a world that already has slavery. That's what he's missing. That's the point. And I tried to take him through. He granted that slavery existed long before Moses or the Bible. But that's what it would have to do to be a promotion of that thing, because it already exists. So if it already exists and we're just talking about what is, not what ought, right? That's the difference.
All right. And did you have anything you wanted to say to that, First Amender?
Yeah, I mean, I provided literally that. But I mean, hell, I was just pulling up a section here by that Jesus said specifically regarding saying to his servants, slaves, should know their place and to not expect thanks for the duties that they are required to perform. This is Luke 17:7-10.
That's servants. Not
I mean, yes, sorry. Fair enough.
okay, he's telling you do your job. So what?
Yeah.
Do your job the right way. Stop.
Doesn't
expecting
even
things.
address, like, slaves obey earthly masters just as you'd obey Christ.
Yeah, I
Doesn't
already
address
gave you the example for
Colossians.
that. If you get wrongfully
obey
arrested,
your
you
earthly
should obey the
masters.
guards, even though it's wrong. You should obey them because you don't want to get your fucking.
But it
ass
does
kicked.
say that you should be fair.
That doesn't mean
to
you
your
ought get
slaves,
arrested.
right? Which would
Again, with the
tacitly
same
endorse
dumb
the
logic.
existence of slaves and masters. But
Hume's
that's
is ought
beside the
fallacy
point.
the entire time,
Yeah.
and presentism. That's all we saw.
it's not presentism. It's what's in the
No, I
Bible.
said that's all we saw was Hume's is ought fallacy and
Except I
presentism.
bring up
this
literal
entire
quotes in the
debate,
Bible
and you're
that
doing
shows
it right
exactly
now. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we'll start up the timer here for the official Q&A. So we'll start with the super chats we came in. If you guys said some dumb shit, I'll give you a salute, but I'm probably not going to read it. Just saying, guys. I'm not reading no crazy shit. Just telling you. I know you guys try to get me, but you won't. All right, let's get those up. Tiny in the back's going to help us in a minute here. All right, so we got a question from Wrath of Reason says, so First Amender, does the law then promote the crime? A law against murder promotes murder and makes more people want to murder. By your logic, this would be true.
Give me a second. Hold on. Let me just make this a little bigger. You got to give me a second. I apologize.
Yeah, no problem.
I want to have it in frame, I guess, the questions. Okay. So First Amender, does law then promote the crime? No, it is the presence of law that tries to prevent crime and creates laws and punishments and restitution for the creation of crime. So the answer is no to that. A law against murder promotes murder and makes more people want to murder. No, because it's literally saying to not do that. The law that I presented was saying you may buy slaves. So it's the exact opposite. By your logic, this would be true. No, you just, I don't know, have a hard time reading. I don't know. I feel like I presented my argument just fine there. Anyway.
All right. And did you have anything you wanted to say to that, Andrew?
No, sorry. I was answering another message.
Yeah, no.
That was for
Yeah,
him.
no
though,
worries. Right? Yeah, that was for him. Put that one down there, Tiny. Before you bring up the next one, we got a Cash App for a question. If we ought infer promotion of slavery by First's logic, then we must infer outlaw of it through the explicit language Andrew provided. Andrew W., First Amender. I don't even know. Where's the headband of a deceptive inversion? I don't know what this is.
So trans promotion.
Oh, you got the question up. Okay. I'm reading it from over here. You got the question up.
If we ought infer promotion of slavery by First's logic, then we must infer outlaw of it through the explicit language Andrew provided. Andrew W. First Amender wears the headband. Okay, this is not even a question. It's just. I'll be honest. Like anytime you go on any like right wing podcast or debate, it's always. You can present as much evidence, logic, but the reality is that it's basically just an echo chamber. There is no amount of logic that you will present. I am of the belief that if I
I've seen
showed
some
up
people in there
with,
saying you were wrecking him, so I don't know if it's an echo
hey,
chamber.
how about that? That's pretty good.
Just
Thank you.
saying.
Appreciate that.
I've seen people
Appreciate that.
back and forth. He's wrecking him. You're wrecking him. It's back and
Well, I
forth. There's a
appreciate
lot
that.
of different people in here, bro.
Okay, appreciate that. Appreciate that. Maybe I should be nicer. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. But yeah, sometimes you don't see them. But yeah, he's got people
Okay,
saying
how about this? I'll say it this
he's
way.
wrecking you. You
There's a
got
group
people
of
saying
people.
you're wrecking him. It's how
Yeah,
debates go.
there's a group of people that I believe that no matter what somebody says, whatever team that person is on, they're going to promote them no matter what. And I'm of the opinion that, I mean, I've come up with sound logic. It all follows direct biblical quotes. All of it is, can be followed and understood pretty easily. And an opponent could then take a giant shit on the plate, and then present it for everybody. And they'd be like, wow, that was very brave. You won the debate. And they
Don't
would
do
clap.
that, Andrew.
I'm not. Definitely not doing that.
All right, let's
I
bring
believe
our
it. I
next
do.
question up. What's our next question there? Joseph says, "What if I went and bought a bunch of slaves and set them free? Am I then proliferating the market?"
Maybe creating the induced demand, as in it would, in theory, increase prices, which would increase the amount of supply. They would just get more slaves. But it would be a good thing that you would be, removing them of their servitude.
So can I respond to that also? That's
Yeah.
the same logic that I was trying to point out, where you don't know if there's more slaves to purchase. That's the same. Like, it doesn't necessarily like, you don't know if they're going to purchase the slaves and free them. You make all types of assumptions that it's going to proliferate slavery without demonstrating actually that it will proliferate slavery.
By buying, you create a demand.
But you just read the question. There's all types of scenarios
I did.
where it
follows.
doesn't actually proliferate slavery.
All right, next question there, Tiny. You don't see no more questions? I think I seen right here. So if the Bible did promote slavery like he said, then would you still support Democrats because they once supported slavery and the time frame is less? Also, people choosing sin isn't saying the Bible allows it.
Okay. This is actually a great argument, because you can actually look at the, what was it called? It was called the Southern Strategy. You can Google this yourself. But basically there was a huge shift as a result of the Watergate scandal. It was seen that the Republican Party was basically done, and that there needed to be a new strategy in order to get new voters. And so what they actually did is that Republicans appealed to racist Jim Crow laws of the South to get them to vote Republican. And so there was a party shift in this, so the Dixiecrats were gone as a result of the Southern strategy. You can Google this. It is there. It does exist. Feel free to Google that the Southern strategy as to why that party shift occurred. But yes, I would agree with you. If we were there back then under Democrats, I would be staunchly against Democrats. I would be in favor of the Republicans, which were in favor of abolition.
All right. And did you have anything you wanted to say there, Andrew?
No, I think that was a great question, and I understand the logic that you're trying to point out.
All right, and then so I think that's it for the super chat questions. So let me go over here to the Q&A chat. I know I've seen a few in there. So we got this one here. From Teriak in the chat. I guess it's kind of like the question I asked, but you could answer again. The government regulates smoking. Does this mean the government promotes or encourages smoking?
Oh, sorry.
This is the kind of question that I pointed out the entire.
My
debate that he
apologies.
refused to engage with. Guys.
My apologies. My apologies. My apologies. My cat, she was requesting attention. Give me a second. I have to copy. I've got a question that they want to ask him as well when you're done. Question for First Amender. The government regulates smoking. Does this mean the government promotes or encourages smoking? No, because they're telling you to not smoke with the regulations and rules. When they're saying you may buy slaves, that is a positive affirmation for a purchase of slaves.
But you may buy cigarettes, right?
Yeah, that would be promoting it.
What? You just said it wasn't promoting it. You just said that wasn't promoting
Okay, let me try again,
cigarettes.
right?
Try
There
again.
can be regulations to deter the smoking, but also promote of buying it as well. Do you understand how that works?
I think maybe you
Why is
missed
this
it.
hard for you to understand?
You should
It's
go
fine.
back and
We'll go
watch
to
it
the next
again. You just
question.
contradicted yourself.
I didn't.
You
You're
can't
just
follow for
dumb.
5 seconds. You literally can't follow for 5 seconds. Go ahead, next question.
Holy crap.
Okay, you'll see when you run it back.
Next one comes in from well, this is kind of a statement, but rather than cherry picking individual biblical excerpts, if we consider all of the biblical laws regarding slavery in total, is God saying people should be moved towards slavery or away from it?
I would say that it argues in favor towards slavery. That's why it took 1,600 years to abolish it.
My turn.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can
I would
answer too.
respond to that by saying, but it still abolished it. Like the timeline that it took is irrelevant. It still did that thing, and therefore doesn't promote the opposite. If you knew lot P, not P, like there's no way. So it can't also have taken 1,500 years to abolish it, thus granting that it did abolish it and also promote slavery. That doesn't follow.
If I borrowed $10,000 from you and said that I would pay it back in 1,600 years, do you think that I'd be paying you back?
Well, I'd be dead. So it's a terrible analogy.
Shit. Yeah, no shit, you'd be dead. So would
right.
I.
But the practice of
so all the slaves who
doesn't
lived
die
and
like
died
people do.
for thousands of years. Oh man.
Okay. That's a red herring.
It's not.
Okay.
It's very related.
Question for First Amender. Another one comes from Teriak. And that one was from Sweatosaurus Rex, by the way. Sorry, I didn't say your name there earlier. But this one coming in from Teriak. Question for First Amender. If the Bible promotes slavery, why did Protestants, American and Britain, abolish it?
Yes, so I agree that there were abolitionists that ad hoc reasoned into the Bible saying that like all men are created equal and all that good flowery stuff. I agree with that. That's fine. This doesn't revoke the 1,600 years of promotion of slavery. And so I can acknowledge both of those.
I would say that it does actually revoke the 1,600 years in which it was just regulating the slavery to get to its end goal of not having any slavery, which would be the actual thing that it was promoting. Can't be both. It can't also have, you can't grant that the abolitionists cited Christianity and it took 1,600 years to get rid of it, but also it promoted it. That doesn't follow.
All right. Next one I have here is sorry, this one comes from Polly Shortcuts. Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers. How was he able to rise to a respected and powerful person as a slave?
Okay, Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers. How was he able to rise to a respected and powerful person as a slave? I don't know. The story says it. Like, I don't know if Joseph actually existed. Like, it's a
No, I think that. Thank you. That was Paulie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with the question. Yeah, he's not going to be able to answer it though. He's not going to engage with that.
And then we got Tim, the real incanter, says the lack of an explicit abolition of something does not infer its promotion. It doesn't logically follow. Please explain how you make that logical leap.
Well, I didn't show the lack of an explicit abolition of something. What I did is I showed verses that directly promote it. So that logically does follow. And I explained how I made it that logical leap. And on top of it, even Andrew acknowledged that that at least it was better than murdering them. So it does, even by Andrew's light. He just made a grave error very early in, but he did say that.
Okay, I'll respond. Saying one thing is better than the other is not promoting it. Simple. Those two things are not the same thing, or they would be the same thing. Like they're different. Promoting something, like, again, he's making the same incorrect assertion that regulation is promotion that he's been making the entire night.
All right. We got a super chat here from Joseph. Thank you, Joseph. If Christianity's end goal was to end slavery, and it takes a while to do so, does that mean that was never their goal? Did it fail even if it occurred? I think that was for you, Amender.
Me? If Christianity's end goal was to end, no, that would be a question for him, Andrew.
No,
I don't believe Christianity's end goal was
follow.
to end slavery. It clearly was there to maintain slavery, and it takes a while to do so. Yeah, it did take a very long 1,600 years. Does it mean that it was never their goal? Yes, it would mean it is never their goal, because it took 1,600 years for them to do it. Did it fail even if it occurred? Yes, it failed for 1,600 years, and then abolitionists undid it.
So again, granting, you see this in the same sentence, you grant and then take it back. That yes, it took 1,600 years for them to abolish it.
I don't have a problem
right?
with contradictions
It took
existing in the Bible.
years. That means that they did abolish
I don't have
it.
a problem with contradictions existing in the Bible. I'm aware of contradictions that exist
about
in the Bible.
This
is one of many
mid-sentence.
contradictions
Can't even
in
have
the
one
Bible.
sentence
No, it's
that
a
doesn't
biblical
contradict itself.
contradiction. It's true. It does.
Okay.
All right. Next one comes in here from. Oh, we got another super chat from Darth Stevo. Says, thank you, Darth. Says, is there no slavery because it's illegal?
Is there no slavery because it is illegal? To be fair, there's actually codified slavery, even in the United States. It's through the prison system. But if I act as if
force them to commit crimes?
yes, it would be effectively illegal to have slaves. Whereas if you say you can go to a foreign nation, like, I don't know, Mexico, and you can buy slaves, then that would be the promotion of it.
All right. And then we got another one this one's from Josh in the chat. If the city of Seattle creates a drug-free zone and says, if you're going to use drugs, use them in these designated locations, are they promoting drug use?
Creates a drug-free zone and says, if you're going to use drugs, use them as these. Yes, they are promoting drug use. And in fact, the effects of doing that has actually proliferated drug use. So I'm not in favor of that. I'm in favor of evidence-based approach, but this is, I guess, a different question or topic, I guess.
I'm getting tired of saying it, but he doesn't understand the difference of a regulation and a promotion. That's a regulation. That's not a promotion. If Seattle creates a drug-free zone, they're regulating where you can use drugs, right?
Why does it increase drug use?
Regulating a specific area.
Why does it increase drug use?
That's not a promotion. Just like the cigarette.
Why does it increase drug use?
What if they have a Surgeon General's warning?
Why does it increase drug use?
Are they not promoting it? What if their drugs have a Surgeon General's warning? By your own logic, then they're not promoting.
Oh my God.
What do you mean? Oh my God, that's your fucking logic, dude.
Damn.
All right. Then we got another one. This one comes in from this one's from Yield to Me. First Amender, if you agree people may vote for Trump, are you promoting people voting for Trump?
Yes, if somebody says you may vote for Trump, then yeah.
Can I respond? No, it's just an objective statement about reality. That's what I mean. You can't turn an is into an ought. You can't do that. You can't just say because you can vote for Trump, you may vote for Trump, that you may do that. That doesn't mean that I'm promoting it. I'm just telling you what is. You may go next door and buy slaves. That doesn't mean I'm promoting it. I'm just telling you what is. Can't get an ought from an is.
If someone said, never mind, actually. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I would bet that you're not. Because you can't get an ought from an is. And that they're
no,
describing
I just...
Okay.
It's fine. Never mind.
Like you may vote for whoever you want. There's no endorsement there.
We got another one here from the Vigilante TV. Said, Andrew, you said in your definition that proliferation would show promotion. In your opening, you also mentioned the fact slavery can be done to pay off debts. Is this not proliferation?
I don't know. It depends. I also said in my opening that they free the slaves every 7 years, and then every 50 years they free them again and give back all their property. So who knows if it's being proliferated or not? Like you would have to know how many are actually being freed, also, and how many are being taken. So that's the only way that I would know if it's actual proliferation. And like a slight proliferation doesn't mean promotion. It could just be the natural cause of the economy. So yeah, if something's seriously proliferated by something that's put in the book, then that can be considered promotion. But that's not what's happening. He never demonstrated that that's what's happening. Never. Yeah, exactly. I think you're muted.
Is may the same as ought?
I was muted. Thank you. Go ahead. You can go ahead.
No, no. Is are not oughts. I understand that. Saying like if somebody is telling you can do this thing, like, hey, you can go out and buy candy, then yeah, it would be promoting that thing.
You just said you know the difference between it is and an ought. You don't, obviously. You just said you know the difference between it is and an ought, then gave an is and said, oh yeah, you'd be promoting
it. Specifically in regards to laws, but yeah, it is. It's promoting it. Because if they were abolishing it, they would say, hey, we're abolishing slavery, but they're not doing that. They're saying, hey, you can go out and buy slaves from foreigners. As in, I'm okay with you doing this thing.
As in, okay. Again, you just did just because you don't outlaw something also doesn't mean that you're promoting it. It's the same. Like you can not abolish something immediately because this is a practice that already exists, and you're not trying to destroy, have more bloodshed than needed, and you can regulate the policy without it being a promotion. So you cannot abolish something, regulate it, and also it not be a promotion, which is exactly what happened.
All right. And then let me see. Oh yeah,
I have a couple of questions.
Okay, if you wanted to ask your questions, you can go ahead.
So there was a question for Andrew. The working man asked, why can't you accept that the Bible promotes slavery at times, but ultimately argues to abolish it?
Because you can't be two things at once, right? And again, he never addressed the fact that there's a new covenant. Almost all of those regulations that he's discussing are Old Testament regulations of slavery from a very ancient world. So no, if this book then has a new covenant that says that slavery is not okay, if Paul specifically writes to Philemon and says free your slave, I'll pay for it, this is the right thing to do under our new covenant, then it wouldn't be promoting that thing. Not to mention the regulations itself aren't promotion, which we've proved over and over and over. And he's granted and then forgot he granted and then granted again and then forgot again like 50 times.
Base God Flashy asks, I said slavery is not the lesser of two evils. That is a false dichotomy. On whose authority are there only choices to kill them or enslave them? Just leave them alone.
Well, this was in reference to when they were sieging a neighboring village or city. So in that case, if you're laying, that I think that's what
it's from foreigners you may buy slaves.
Yeah,
it's
that's
not referring to a
promotion.
siege. That was a separate verse that is not related.
We already proved that. You may vote for Donald Trump
that Israelites are to follow among foreigners around them. It is not that.
Right. Well, that was closer to that. The reason I was saying is that that verse is closer to an ought. It's still not an ought than the one you're citing, which is just telling you what you may do under the current economy that already exists at that time.
Mm-hmm. Working Man just donated another $1.99 USD stating, regulating something means to promote it by allowing it.
Was that for me? Sorry, I was reading my
that was for you, yeah.
Chat. Can you
regulating something means to promote it by allowing it.
Okay. If I regulate hazardous waste, am I promoting hazardous waste? Like I'm showing you example.
That's like arguing that you may not.
Regulation isn't.
But this one is specifically saying you can, not you may not buy from foreigners. That would be akin to arguing your toxic waste chemical idea, because there are laws that say you may not, which explicitly does not promote, but it would specifically avoid you from doing a specific behavior with toxic waste. But that is not what
it probably also tells
saying.
You
it's saying you may buy from foreigners slaves.
I'm sure it says what you may do with your toxic waste. That. I'm sure it does say what you may do with your toxic waste. That doesn't mean you're promoting it. You may do.
You're promoting them doing something with a toxic waste. Yes. Yes.
No, it doesn't.
If they're saying
it,
you may hold on. If you're saying you're getting it,
that already exists.
Hold on. If you're saying you may throw out the toxic chemicals in this designated toxic chemical throw out place, you are promoting to throw out the chemicals in a safe place.
Yeah, but you're not promoting that thing. You're just telling somebody how to, you're not promoting that thing. You're giving regulations for how to carry, for what
I tried
to do
working
with
man.
that thing. Do you understand?
I tried working man. I tried.
This is what you do with this thing. Is not the same.
He was almost there and then he lost all of it.
Dude, I'm not going to try to explain this to you. He doesn't know the difference between it is and an ought. He doesn't know the difference between a regulation and a promotion. He doesn't know the difference between describing what already exists and promoting something. Seriously, these are important distinctions. Like you should take some time to formulate.
It's also an ought, by the way. Saying from them you may buy slaves. That's an ought.
You may do this thing. Like you can't. That's what made you may vote for Donald Trump. That was the example. You can't even stick the example you granted 5 minutes ago.
Cognitive dissonance.
5 minutes ago.
We got a $5.
Saying you may vote for Donald Trump is not an ought. So how is it an ought for this one? You have to be consistent with your logic. You already granted that.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Dickhead for $5 says, and he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. Exodus 21.
Yeah, we brought this up, and that's true. That if you specifically steal, but let's say, for example, if a foreigner steals another foreigner, and then they decide to sell the foreigner to an Israelite, then they can, in fact, do that. That would not put them to death. In fact, you may do exactly that, as per what God said. And we've already addressed this. And name checks out, by the way,
also because it's an important distinction. Like you can't. That's why I kept asking you, where did the slaves come from? Because you can't go out and steal them specifically as per that Exodus verse. So that's why it's is describing what you can do from a system that already exists.
Yeah,
they're just regulating how to operate in that
slavery.
System.
Yeah.
If they said, no, you can go steal that person, don't worry about it, go steal another human being and bring them into slavery, then that might be closer to, it still wouldn't be promotion. They're still just telling you what you may do, but it would be closer than where you are at.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Since we have a couple minutes there, and Amender got some questions from his chat, I see a question comes in from Andrew's side from Kung Fu Joe. Says, first Amenders, Catholics and Orthodox Christians reject sola scriptura as heresy. So why should they believe your interpretation of Scripture?
I mean, it's not just my interpretation. It was the roughly 1600 years of interpretation resulting in the codification of slavery by the way, slavery still exists even to this day, whether you use the Quran or if you even use the permission of slavery regarding the prison system in the United States. Slavery still exists. And so, I mean, I would argue in favor of abolition of slavery entirely and throw out the fucking Bible because I think it's a morally abhorrent.
Okay, I'll respond also. Thank you, Kung Fu. That's a great question and a great point. I don't think he actually understands what you're saying. What he's saying is that sola scriptura means that you only need scripture to interpret
yes,
scripture, right? Which is what you're doing. But what you actually have to do, because Catholics and Orthodox don't believe in that,
1600 years of history did.
Because Catholics and Orthodox don't believe in sola scriptura, which he's right, I'm a Catholic. You have to look to the authority of the church to actually say what they mean by the passage. And no church authority says that they're promoting slavery.
I'm sorry that you're a Catholic.
Actually, your interpretation is completely wrong of the scripture. You have to look to the church leaders as to what that scripture means.
I'm sorry that you're a Catholic.
Okay.
Jeremy comes in for $5, says, first Amender, you encounter a fork in the road. You may go left or you may go right. Which am I promoting? Or by your logic, am I promoting both?
Both, I would say. You're promoting driving, the act of driving. Yeah.
Another great question, just showing he's being bad faith. He knows what you're saying. You can't promote
directly the question.
Huh?
I answered the question directly, even using one of his options. What do you mean bad faith?
Yeah, but that's not what he wasn't asking if you were promoting driving.
Just because you don't like the answer doesn't mean I'm answering in bad faith. I am
going
left
or right. That's what he's asking.
Maybe to help us
going left or right.
It says here,
driving.
Maybe to help us.
Am I promoting both? You're promoting driving.
Which am I promoting? That's what he's asking.
You're promoting both.
You're promoting driving. No.
Yeah, you're promoting driving, and you're promoting
that's
both.
Not the question.
Yeah, both of those.
Just a follow up here, quick. Maybe we could. Maybe this could help us understand your side here, Mender. So how would you change that sentence? You may go left to you may go right for it to be a regulation rather than
just giving you a choice
of promotion.
Both. It's just giving you a choice of both.
Yeah, I'm asking like, how would we change this sentence to be a regulation rather than a promotion?
You may not go left. You may not go right. You may only go left. Do not go right. You may only go right. You may not go left. Those would be probably regulations, I would say.
All right. And did you have anything there, Andrew?
No, it's the same point over and over. I don't know how many times we have to show him, but he's just bad faith. He won't.
I answered the question exactly as he requested.
You didn't. You may.
I did. You just didn't like the answer.
Right.
I am answering in good faith. I'm not here to like play mind games with you. I'm just.
It's important.
I'm tearing apart your logic and then showing it.
Which
that's all I'm doing.
You may vote for Biden.
I've already addressed
you may vote for Trump. Who am I promoting? Who am I promoting? You may vote for Biden. You may vote for Trump. Who am I promoting?
He could be both. It's both.
No, who am I promoting?
You're promoting voting. The act
who am I
of voting.
Promoting? That's the prompt. Promoting by saying you may do this thing. You don't want to answer because it destroys your Leviticus argument.
All right.
Okay. Flashy Base Got Flashy just donated $5 USD stating PBS article.
All right, last one.
Pope Leo XIV makes historic apology for Vatican's role in legitimizing slavery. Is Pope Leo XIV wrong?
Was that question for me?
Yep.
I'm sorry. They're not pulled up. You got to repeat it.
That's okay. That's okay.
In the chat.
That's fine. That's fine. I have the same. It's fine. PBS article. Pope Leo XIV makes a historic apology for Vatican's role in legitimizing slavery. Is Pope Leo XIV wrong?
I'd have to see the exact quote and analyze it. I don't know. I don't know the quote. I'm not familiar with it, so I don't want to make a comment about a quote.
Okay. Presume it's correct. Presume that Pope Leo XIV specifically made apology for the Vatican's role in legitimizing slavery. Under that hypothetical, is Pope Leo XIV wrong? Would he be wrong?
For what was the exact wordage for doing what to slavery?
Propose a hypothetical. Let's say Pope Leo XIV said the following, stating an apology for the Vatican's role in legitimizing slavery. Under this hypothetical, is Pope Leo XIV wrong?
I mean, legitimizing isn't promoting, so I guess not. Doesn't have anything to do with the prompt. Nothing to do with the prompt. Nothing to do with it. So it's irrelevant. So I'll just
We
grant
tried.
it.
We
All
tried.
right,
Flash.
and
You did-
Jeremy-
That's
Jeremy-
not promoting. That's the prompt.
Jeremy snuck one last one in and said, better yet, you are at a reception and they present you a choice of steak or fish meals. Which are they promoting?
Steak and fish meals and eating, buying something. Yes.
All right. All right. So that wraps up our Q&A
Can I
for
ask one more
tonight.
question? If I
It's
say
the
you
good
may
kind of
jump off
slavery,
a cliff,
guys.
am
Okay,
I-
one
am
more
I
question. One
promoting
more
that?
question.
If I say you may jump off a cliff, am I promoting it or am I just saying what exists?
Kinda, yeah.
No, I'm just saying you can.
Listen,
if, you
if
want.
somebody
I'm
said
not promo- I
you
would- what
may
if I say you may jump
KYS,
off a cliff,
right?
but you shouldn't?
If somebody said that, that's a bannable offense. Am I right, Speakeasy? You
No,
may.
but I'm just saying. If no, I'm
Is
not.
that- is
it's
that a
hypothetical,
bannable
But I'm just
offense?
saying you could say.
I
you
just wanna
may
be
do
clear,
something.
Oh, you
right?
mean on
You can do
YouTube?
whatever you
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
on
shouldn't do that
YouTube.
on
That's not a
YouTube.
promotion. That's not a
Yeah,
promotion.
don't do
just
that on YouTube.
stating
If
that
you
may
said
do
that on
this thing.
YouTube, that would be so. Like that. That's what I'm saying. Is like if you're saying you may do this, you are in effect promoting it.
No, I'm just
yeah.
stating reality. You may
Appreciate
do it. Like I don't give a shit if you do or not. You may do that thing though. It's not a promotion. That's what we're trying to point out.
Gotcha.
All right, that will wrap up the Q&A for tonight. I want to thank you everyone in the live chat for all the questions, the engagement, the support. This is what allows me to keep bringing you these debates and the entire Swords of Reason experience week after week. So I appreciate every single one of you. And of course, a huge thank you to our debaters for stepping into the arena tonight and sharpening their ideas in front of all of us. Before we move on, let me check real quick. Are either of you planning to hang out for the open panel tonight?
I'm gonna be having an open panel on my Discord, discord.gg/FIRST Amender. I'll be hanging out in there, and you guys can join in if you want. But
All right,
that's
all
where
right,
I'm
no
going to be. Okay.
I can hang
Okay.
out till like for like another half hour, 45 minutes. I got like 3
All right.
hours total.
All right, awesome. Yeah, no obligation for anyone, no obligation. So, all right, here's what's happening next, everyone. We're going to roll the debate outro song and video. It's going to run for about 4 minutes. Perfect time for everyone. Hit the washroom, grab a drink, stretch your legs, do whatever you need to do before the Chaos and Chill open panel begins. During that outro, I'm going to drop a link in the chat for anyone who wants to join the open panel, test your ideas, continue the conversation on tonight's topic. Anyone is welcome to come hop in. Just come ready, obviously, think, question, debate. If you're coming up to try and troll, bring personal dramas, anything like that, you're just going to get muted and then most likely booted real quick. So go ahead when you're ahead
Thanks
with
for
this
the
idea.
invite, Speakeasy. I got to get going. You have a great
Okay.
day.
Yeah, no problem. Take care. And before we run the outro, one last reminder, make sure you guys go subscribe to both debaters, okay? Their links are in the description. And if you're enjoying these debates, hit the subscribe on the Speakeasy channel as well so you don't miss any of the upcoming Swords of Reason battles we have Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. This is where logic meets passion. All right, let's roll the outro, and we'll see you all in a few minutes for the Chaos and Chill.